Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 232. My name is NVZ, and I have streamed to some people before, Bally, in the past, to maybe like 200 back in the Pokemon days. You know, that was a good amount.
Would you say that was your Pokemon peak?
Yeah, maybe 250, 300. Oh, actually, during the charity events, maybe like 400 or 500. So that was quite a lot. I just streamed to 8,500 people this week, so that was a nice little fun thing to do. Yeah, we can get into that. But I don't know. How would you feel about streaming to that many people, Bally?
I would, my streaming technique. I play some game, then I chat a bit, then I play some game, and then the two will never overlap.
Yes.
It's impossible for the two to overlap.
It's really funny because, like, when we have done recording video stuff in the past of, like, what was it, like, the game on Wii U, Affordable Space Adventures, right?
Yes.
Just Bally's very focused on the task, and his brain just like his all energy goes to like playing the game, and then like nothing coming from his mouth. And I'm like, it's just very interesting because it's one of those skills, right? It's actually a thing that people are like, oh, you could, people just play video games on the internet, it's so easy, but it's actually quite hard to do, to play games and talk at the same time. So
it definitely is one of those things that looks easy, but is very much not. And it's for me, I think the struggle is that it's not distinctly different parts of the brain. There is overlap, and that it's not like it's not like listening to podcasts and playing a driving game. It's not. No, it's not that distinction. There's overlap, which makes my brain personally just like shut down. And I know your way of getting over that bump when you were earlier on in your streaming days was your brain would basically just waffle random crap.
Oh yeah,
but that was like your brain. I feel like that's the first step, though, is being able to waffle random crap, and then you can gradually, over time, become more articulate with that crap and get better. And I'm not even at the waffle crap stage, so
the waffle crap
it's
stage.
a long road.
Well, yeah, I mean, you haven't had much chance to do it, to be fair. You know?
No.
You're not a streamer or a YouTube person, really.
You just throw me in there, and I will just be silent, playing Affordable Space Adventures, trying to work out.
Yeah, or like when we're streaming Apex Legends, I'm like trying to ask you questions, and you're just like, you can't hear me basically because you're just so focused.
That's the sort of game where even if I was playing by myself, I wouldn't be listening to a podcast because I'm trying to focus so much on
exactly
what's going on and where. But
for sure. But yeah, I streamed on Steam because it was Steam Next Fest, and we have two games coming out soon, which is the Entropy Center and the Case of the Golden Idol, and they're coming out in October and November, which is very soon. But we had to do some promotion stuff on there, which meant live streaming, and so I was live streaming on the front page of Steam for the Entropy Center in particular, and that was fun because you could see the viewers climbing, and eventually got to like 8,500 people.
Did anyone come in and say, "Hey, it's that Pokemon guy"?
No, I wish they did. That did happen. I don't think I told the story on the show yet. I told you, but like someone came up to me, when I was on a lunch break at work and went out to get some food, and was like, "Hey, are you that Pokemon, that NVZ guy?" I was like, what the fuck is going? This has never happened to me during my entire Pokemon career. And somewhere in London, this guy came up to me and said hi, and I was like, what? This is bizarre. So that is the only, and maybe will only be the other time that happens. But,
I guess the hardcore Pokemon community circa 2012 maybe doesn't overlap with the checking Steam front page every day 2022 community.
Well, perhaps. I don't know. You'd be surprised. Like, I have a lot of Steam friends on my Steam list who are people from that era, right? People who would have watched me, and I still consistently see a lot of those people on Steam, like buying games, and like it's my friends list recommends, like, oh, this person.
There'll be many of them listening to this show right now.
Probably not. I would doubt that, but still, it's very interesting. There is probably a little bit of a crossover there that you wouldn't expect, but yeah. I also just want to shout out that the Case of the Golden Idol got reviewed in Edge magazine, and I bought a physical magazine for the first time in 10 years?
Yeah, I wondered if you'd bought the actual physical magazine.
Yes,
nice.
Yeah, I went to the shops and bought it specifically so that I could have it as part of history. Edge magazine officially recognized Case of the Golden Idol as a better game than Splatoon 3. Splatoon 3 got a 7, Case of the Golden Idol got an 8. It's officially better than Splatoon 3, so you heard it here first. Anyway, it's very cool. It's very, very cool. And Edge are incredibly harsh critics. Like, they are probably like an 8 from Edge is basically a 9 or 10 from any other regular outlet. So yeah, I take that with very, very high compliments, and very, very happy with how that's going. So I'm sure I'll be plugging and promoting that shit in the next episode as well, because we're getting closer to the release dates and launches for those two games. So yes, of course, take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I'm 100% biased, because I'm involved in trying to sell these games to people. So yeah, but anyway, it's very exciting stuff. Cool. Bally, how are you doing? How's things going? I heard your little lad got a bit of an illness.
Oh, Bally Jr. got a bit of a cold, and it's kind of like the first half of the night he's fine, but then come 4 a.m. he's like just getting the phlegm out of his lungs a bit. He's been to the doctor. It's just a cold, no infections or anything. And last night was a lot better than the night before.
That's good.
And full credit to Caroline for getting up with him, because I was working on Friday. So well done to her for
nice. Very good. Very good. Got through COVID, but now the cold is striking.
Yeah, he had COVID, and his symptoms were just like. His only symptom was like a productive cough with COVID, whereas me and Caroline were like fever, high temperature, no energy, all these things. And yeah, he just had like a mild cough, and then he just gets a random cold, and it hits him harder than COVID. So yeah. Generally speaking, I think COVID doesn't affect the under ones quite as harshly as adults. Generally,
seems like it. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good to hear, at least. We'll get into some of the stuff we're going to be talking about on today's show. Bally, do you want to let the fine folks at home know what we're chatting about today?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. The second segment, we've got your emails, and the third segment, we want to chat about that Mario trailer, because that was interesting. And we've also got an email someone sent in about the Mario trailer that we can cover as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll get to the fever dream soon enough. But Bally, let's start grounded with some video games. You finally finished a game you've been chipping away at for a long time now.
I've been working on it for months.
Yes.
And that game is Dead Cells.
Yeah.
So I've been continuing my list of supposedly good games that MBZ has played that I haven't played.
I like how it now comes with like the caveat of, in quotation marks, supposedly good games. Okay.
No, already this year, what have I played? So that includes Dead Cells, To the Moon, Hyperlight Drifter.
Yes,
I feel like there's another couple this year that aren't springing to mind.
Yeah, the list definitely gets shorter and shorter as you kind of fill it in.
And I should say these games I think are all in our top 50 games of all time list.
Okay.
And
cool.
I haven't played them, which is another. So it's going to be very, very valuable for when we next cover our top 50
Sure,
games.
give you some ammunition.
More of us have played both, which is always good for the show. But I really enjoyed my time with this game overall. I should say I've only beaten the main final boss like once. I've not done any like extra stuff.
Did you get all the abilities as you went through? Because it was interesting that I somehow, when I got back to Dead Cells, I beat it on my third try after the patch and stuff like that. And then after that, I actually kept playing because I wanted to go and get the abilities that you get throughout the game. So like the wall run and jump and stuff like that, and the electricity one that zaps you to different places. Right. Did you go after those? Did you find those along your way?
I got the electricity zap. I got the climb up the vine.
Yes.
I never got the wall jump
really
at all.
Okay.
And there was another couple I got, but I definitely missed a few, but I'm okay with that. Like, I think I will say I think the middle of the game maybe was a little bit sluggish. I think sometimes the progression can feel a little not pointless, but I don't know. It doesn't.
You feel like you can just die extremely quickly from things that almost feel out of your control in Dead Cells. You know, like there are moments where like things will just kind of like converge on you to a point, and you're like, well, I'm fucked here, and I can't really do much about it. You know, and I think a lot of my most successful runs were the ones where I was doing a Bally strategy where I was just slow and turtle and like just very carefully placing down my traps and looking around every corner.
That's a good strategy for Dead Cells. I think some of the bosses, if you only do that, the bosses can maybe find you out a bit, and you've got to be ready for them. But that is a good strategy generally. I think that some runs, you can really just focus on like, right, this run I just want to get cells, and like you will go to the place that is maybe harder but will gift you more cells, and then it doesn't feel like the correlation between gaining cells and meaningful progress happens that quickly. Like I think I spent 15-16 hours with the game total, and from maybe at least 10 to 12 hours in the middle, I felt like my progression was incredibly slow. And I think that's partly because the shop, as it were where you're giving your cells to, is really, really big. And like, I found I was putting a lot more money into the health upgrades and the like bank upgrades so that you get more money next time you restart a run. And as a result, I was barely buying any weapons until like the very end.
Interesting.
And maybe that was the wrong strategy. I should have gone for more weapons.
Yeah, I would have kind of like, I think what I ended up doing was kind of switching it up, because a lot of the weapons are a lot cheaper, right? Those health upgrades eventually get to like 300, 400 cells, and that's like multiple runs in order to get one thing up on that, versus like, okay, you have a blueprint for, you know, this weird sword, that's 60 cells, right? Which you can feasibly do in one go if you're kind of efficient about it. So
and the blueprint just means it will appear in like shops and at the start randomly, like.
So the blueprint means that you're then able to invest cells to unlock it, and then once you've unlocked then it can
blueprint,
appear
then
anywhere.
you invest the cells.
Yeah.
And also once you've invested the cells on that exact run, it will also actually drop the item if you did want to pick it up there and then.
Yes, it does.
Which is quite nice. And on my successful run, I actually did that with this magic bow I ended up beating the game with, that basically it shot 5 homing arrows, and then the more arrows that went into the same enemy, the more damage those arrows would do. So I was like, this is like a boss taking down weapon, basically.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Which is very cool. And I maybe wish I would have gone a bit more for those weapons earlier on, and might have. I think it took me 33 runs to beat the game. I could have probably done it a little quicker than that had I kind of gone for some more interesting weapons faster. I don't know. I also found that, yes, you can do runs that just go after cells. I never really did that, and I constantly, I like explored a little bit, but the second I reached an area where I got my ass handed to me, and I knew that there was another area that was as far along, that was easier, I'd always like side with the easier one. So I'd end up, eventually I like found my preferred route, and then I just kind of stuck to it, and then maybe my personal preference would have just been a game where like there's just one area that it's obviously what's the computer generate? What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, it's like random procedural generation
levels. Yeah, and like I didn't feel the need for all the crazy maze like ways that the different worlds connected. I would have just been happy just going, right, this is my level to that level to that level. That's the challenge I enjoyed the most.
And I guess that doesn't really make it a roguelike then, does it? You know, like that's the thing is the game is built in that way so that you can repeatedly go through it and have a different experience every time, which I think is what a lot of people.
Yeah, but like Hades does the same world on world. It doesn't make a big difference.
So there's two different approaches, right? Like Dead Cells takes the more kind of actual procedural approach. It still does have its kind of like custom made stuff, right? You'll notice that certain like sections, certain rooms and things will be similar to ones that you've seen before, because they are kind of copy and pasting those, whereas the general broad structure of where things are is kind of diverted, versus Hades, where there are set numbers, there are set rooms, the rooms themselves are designed, but it's just the order of those rooms that changes. So it's like a slight deviation, slight difference in the way that it approaches procedural generation. And I guess you just prefer
I mean, I way prefer like the Hades mode. I don't care for like switching between worlds so frequently as it did. And like I said, once I found my main route that I thought was kind of like the path of least resistance, I wanted to stick to that, because I thought I'd get to the end the most easily, essentially.
Sure, yeah.
And yeah, I thought the skill ceiling generally felt by the end like a lot lower than I thought it was going to be for just to do like the main game. I'm not talking about like post game stuff and stuff, which I'm sure gets.
Yeah. Boss Cells 1 is just like fucked up, basically.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard. Yeah.
But I found like I never got into shields. I was very into my bow and arrow, obviously.
Interesting. Yeah, I never really used bow and arrow that much.
On my eventual successful run, rather than balancing out my ability, so I'd always worry that my health was going to be too low, so I'd try and invest between red, green and purple abilities a bit more evenly. And then on my successful one, I was like, screw this, I'm just going red for everything, and then I'll make all my weapons red. And even when you do that, your health ends up being a lot higher than you realize, because you end up picking up power-ups that will force you to invest in purple or green.
Yep,
so you'll still get that balance. So I ended up going in with like 14 red and then 5 or 6 green and purple, and my health ended up being like, I think 8,000, which was still easily high enough to beat the final boss. And the final time I beat the final boss, like I really had just overpowered myself, and it was very easy.
I think that makes sense though. Like if you had been distributing evenly the whole time, I totally get why you were having such a hard time, because it is a game where you should be min-maxing that stuff, right? Like it
but I don't think the
you.
game conveys that to you. It's just the process of working it out and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
kind of. I guess so. Yeah, and it is one of those things, like if you do have only one color for your weapons, then you will almost naturally just gravitate towards that. But I think because you are particularly turtly, you like lots of health, you probably were just like, well, I need to evenly distribute this so that I get lots of health.
Right. Yeah. So I was thinking, right, I can go for bow and arrows that are powerful. I can go for traps, and then I can try and invest in my health the most and just kind of survive bosses.
Yeah.
And I think this game definitely rewards getting in there with a lot of rewards glass cannons a lot more than I'd say a game like Hades does.
Definitely.
And that's totally fine, and I think it works well for what this game's going for. And yeah, I thought this game was great.
Were there any other like kind of weapons that you tried out that you liked or didn't like? Because for me, I generally liked a lot of the weapons I came across, and I think the nice thing about Dead Cells is most weapons are viable and most of them are fun to use. And so I switched around quite a lot and I didn't really have one archetype that I lent into. There were certain ones that I like I like quick, fast weapons, so like the swords that are nimble and quick and stuff like that.
Yeah, there were some heavy hitting melee weapons that I very much didn't like, and because I felt so exposed on.
Did you get the giant scythe at all, like the one that's two-handed, that you basically can only have that and nothing else? Like you can't have a second weapon, it's just
really?
the two-handed.
I didn't get that, I don't think.
That's one that they added in an update. I think it may have been part of a paid DLC, because I did buy the first DLC for Dead Cells.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So as soon as, I think it came out like a couple of months after I had started, or maybe it was like after the Game of the Year show where I talked about it, because I played it I finished it a couple of years after it came out. They put out a DLC and I just bought it because I'm like, I just love this game so much. I just want to.
Because you can add one thing that's I think a bit crap, to be honest, is that you can get to work. So in the in between worlds, you can go up and down lifts that'll take you to what you think is the next world, and then you try and go through the door, and it's like, oh, this is actually for DLC only.
Oh, really?
And it's wow, that's kind of shitty to just dangle the carrot like that.
I would have thought they would have made it so that those just didn't appear in that case, you know?
Yeah, no, they appear, and then they say you can't access them.
Wow.
So all right, well, I'll pick the main game door, I guess, and then you keep going. But yeah, I thought this game was great. I think it if you're just playing for that main game win, I think, like I said, the middle is a little bit sluggish. 15 to 16 hours is maybe a little on the long side for me personally, but maybe I just need to get better at the game, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think your approach to roguelikes is generally beat it once and then just move on with your life, whereas I think these games are generally designed for people who want to play them again and again and again, because that's the way the games are designed, right? They're built to be replayed and played and on harder things and more weapon variety and trying out different builds and all that sort of stuff.
But I still feel like I had my fill of trying out different weapons, different builds, trying this, trying that, and I think this game does a good job of appealing to the different groups in that way. Same way Hades does. I think it does well in appealing to different groups, and I like this game a lot. I do think Hades is a hell of a lot better.
I agree.
And it's not fair to just constantly compare games to other games that are similar, but it was very cool. I'm glad I played it, and this one's nearer the higher end of the supposedly good games that MBZ has played that I haven't played. So
yeah, honestly, Bally, I don't remember where anything is on our list. So
I can't remember. I think Dead Cells is maybe just inside or just outside top 20, but I could be wrong. But yeah.
I think also when we talked about it for that show, it was quite soon after I had fallen back in love with it. So, there's a lot of recency bias in that sense.
Are you a little less hot on it now than you used to be?
Yeah, because I've gone back to it a few times since, and I do pick it up now and again. And maybe it's because I'm playing on the harder difficulty now, but it's just it fucking kicks my ass, and I'm just man. I do really enjoy it, but
it's 2018, right?
Yeah, it's 2018. I didn't get back into it, I think, until the start of 2020. That's when I really kind of dug deep.
I don't know what it is about it, but it does. There's something about it that feels like a game that came from 2018. I don't know how. Okay. I don't know whether that's in the feel or the look or a bit of both. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like a game that would come out in 2022 in the same way.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
yeah,
it's good.
It's great. Dead Cells is great. I recommend people check it out. It's an awesome game. Cool. We, Bally, played another game together. We did a co-op game for a first time in a long time, I think. I think probably, It Takes Two was maybe the last one.
There's just not enough good co-op games out there.
Not enough with online, not enough with crossplay as well. This is Escape Academy. So this game is actually not on Switch. The whole time we were playing it, we thought it was on Switch, but it's not. And I think it probably should come to Switch at some point because it feels like it could run quite easily. And I think there was maybe plans for it to be there.
They've gone for an art style that you think they would have picked just for the explicit reason of getting it to run on Switch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. We played crossplay. I was on PC, you were on Xbox, and it worked pretty seamlessly, I would say. There was some issues with connections here and there, but like otherwise it was pretty easy to play. And this is basically an escape room style game. In real life you have these escape rooms that people go to, and they're like, you get locked in a room with a bunch of people and you have to figure your way out by solving puzzles and riddles and stuff like that. And this is basically that turned into a game where you attend this academy, and this academy is all about like becoming an expert puzzle solver, basically. There's story elements, there's stuff like that. Generally, I kind of just buttoned through it and didn't read a lot of it. I think it was just kind of superfluous.
The story is very strange and weak.
It's interesting. But the main core of it is that you have like 10, 11 kind of like scenarios where you have to kind of solve puzzles and figure out.
A good number, I think. Like I would have been, if there was more, I would have been a bit like, oh, here we go. But I never got to that point of, oh, here we go, another puzzle. Let's get to the end of the game. It always felt quite. We would do like 2 or 3 puzzles per play session, and it felt very fresh and new every time.
Yeah, exactly. The setup is that you're at this academy and you're kind of going through these different challenge rooms, and they all have like these kind of different ways of solving these puzzles, but there's a lot of kind of crossover between how things work, right? So you might have, one area where there's a bunch of padlocks and they're all like locked behind either numbers or like letters or something along those lines. And I think there's a good variety of those. It tends to lean on that stuff quite a lot, of like almost kind of like trying to transliterate or like to take letters and like transfer them to some other language, or trying to figure out a pattern that you see on a wall or something. There's a lot of stuff like basically decoding. I would say decoding is like a good part of this game, where you'll just come across different scenarios. Like, for example, there's a garden area where there are these bunches of statues, and these statues all have like different slight variations to them in terms of what the face looks like. And there's a big door in the center, and you can go to that door and you can change what the face looks like. And so the idea is that you have to look at all these statues, and from a previous thing you have like a different clue that tells you what are the statues you need to be looking at, and then you look at those individual statues and take like, oh, the eyebrows from this one look like this, so we need to do that on the door, and the eyeballs are pointed in this direction, so we need to move them that way, and the moustache is this way. And so it's like kind of collating different information from different sources to come together and figure out puzzles. And I have to say, it's a really satisfying experience, especially because like some of the puzzles, like I would be quicker on the gun with and be able to figure out, and you'd be able to be like, oh, I see.
Yeah, it was interesting because our brains do work slightly differently, and you're definitely better at the more literary like word puzzles.
Yes.
Maybe barring the word puzzle at the end, which we both have just gone at.
Anyway, we fucked up real bad. Yeah.
Generally, you were better at the wordy stuff, and I was maybe a little better at like not necessarily pattern recognition, but trying to identify. Oh, right, this is
what it's asking us to do almost. Like there were certain ones where we'd get to and I'd be like, I don't know what the hell, and you're like, oh, I think I recognize that what we're asked it to do here.
It's like often like a visual recognition of something that links to that. Like this thing, but this grid was a map, and I'm like, this is definitely going to be a map, and you're like, okay, and then like 15 minutes later, it was a map.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and stuff like that. And I think the game mixes up types of puzzles really well. It never feels monotonous and here we go again with this type of puzzle. It's pretty fresh all the way through, even if there are common things you're doing between puzzles.
Yeah, you're always going to be like finding a lock with a bunch of numbers on it, and that's cool, but the way that you get to the solution is always different, right? It's never going to be the exact same thing, but yeah, they do like a lot of decoding stuff, and I like that stuff a lot. Like I find it satisfying to have those puzzles that kind of like get your brain to think, but in a way that never felt frustrating to me, in a way that always felt like doable and manageable, and that you would get the satisfaction of like, oh, you know, you get that little kind of thing. It's, you know, like when you solve a puzzle in Zelda or something, you get that little like, oh, that was clever kind of moment, right?
Yeah.
And it constantly almost like dopamine hits those like little moments until you get to the end and you're like, oh, it all kind of comes together and you kind of figure out the final thing.
It's got its own Zelda chime as well, this game, that
Yes.
goes off every time you even solve a mini puzzle. It's just that little dopamine hit. It's just like, bang.
Yeah,
love it.
totally. I was going to say that I really like that this game has the features for you to communicate really, really well.
Yeah.
So what you can do is you can bring up a screen that almost split screens the game, so you can see what your partner is doing at any given time, and you can just flick between that whenever you want. You can also bring up any kind of clue that you've gathered, so you can pick up stuff like maps or like pieces of paper that will have information on it. You can then like attach that to your main screen, so you can like tab it on your screen, so you can be walking around while still having the information up. And there were multiple situations where you would be at one space and I would be at another space, and we would both have to do things, but that we were like further apart from each other. But I would be like, okay, I'm going to bring up the map on my screen, you go to the pin code and you start typing in. I'll tell you what to type in, and I can see in real time you doing it as you do it, as I kind of like tell you how to do it. So it has really accommodated for this as a co-op experience. And we were talking about it as like, how would we feel about this if we were to play it single player? And I think it would just be worse on every level. You know, part of this game's charm and part of the charm of escape rooms, I think, is that collaborative experience of like being able to bounce ideas off of each other in order to come to solutions. And when you're on your own, I think there's a tendency to get stuck in a rut, right? To think there is going to be this one way to do something, and then you just kind of can't think outside of your own box. And by having that collaborative ability, it lets you kind of break free of those kind of chains, which is super nice. And yeah, the way that the game is built really feels like it's kind of pointing you to play it co-op. So I would definitely recommend playing this co-op, and I think that it's a better experience doing it that way. If you do want to play it single player, I think it's totally fine and probably an okay experience, but it feels like the game was built in order to handle co-op.
And there's just a joy of like us sitting down and actually talking through how we want to solve something as well. There's like a real joy in that, and both of us will be trying to work it out in slightly different ways, and then we'll both have elements that are correct and elements that are wrong, and it's us about like matching up the bits of our brains that are actually getting the right thing and trying to put it together and then force it in the level. Like, I think just that process was incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, it's a really well-made thing, and I think it does feel like hand designed in a way that, I don't know, like, I haven't done an escape room before, but I have heard like people who have gone through them, and they sometimes feel like they're designed in a way for you to not solve them, in the sense that they might want you to come back again and try another time, you know, whereas this one feels like it very much wants you to solve it, and it even goes so far as to let you have kind of extensions, you know, that there is definitely a satisfaction of finishing it under the time limit. So every stage has a time limit, also has like a difficulty rating, and there were, I would say, only like maybe 3 times or 4 times that we had to use the extended timer, and it always felt good when you didn't have to use it, right? When you were able to.
I think we only even used the hint system about a similar number of times as
well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And the hint system is pretty good, I think.
Yes.
I think the final challenge is pretty damn hard, and it's asking a lot of you within the time limit, and it's asking a lot of very different types of puzzles, and often them overlapping in unusual ways, which I think we found challenging. But I look back and think of like the bomb one, where I think that was us at like our absolute peak level of cooperation, and we did it first time. I think it was like a 25-minute one as well, and it was those puzzles were also a really good example where there was one that was wordy, there was one that was more based on like pattern recognition. There was, it bounced between our types of fortes very very seamlessly, and it just kind of worked very well.
Yeah, there was me just like in a tent translating Russian while you were like going around looking at a map, and like it felt like we were at our peak condition there, like doing that stuff.
And that was maybe like the 8th puzzle in the game or something we'd done in the game, so we were like really conditioned, you're right, like ready to go. Yeah,
totally. So yeah, I think this game is really, really fantastic, and I think that they are actually going to be adding some more like scenarios to it. It feels like a game where you can do that, right? I mean, it's based around escape rooms.
This is the Game Pass model, isn't it? Like they get you hooked on the game and then they charge you for the DLC.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like it's been successful. And I would definitely be happy to jump in and play some more of this stuff.
I'd be up for the DLC. Yeah,
definitely. 100%. I think the last thing I want to say is like how smartly they kind of section off these levels, right? Because you could get into a scenario where it gets overwhelming and you go in there and you're like, there's 100 things to do and I don't know even where to start. And certainly that felt the case sometimes, where you'd go into a level and you're like, I think the hardest part is like, where do you start? Like, what is the thing that you need to do first in order to kind of like start the chain reaction that will then lead you down the garden path, right?
Yeah.
But the smart thing the game does is, in a lot of levels, it will kind of section you off into a smaller area, and you can't get through like a locked door or like a passageway until you have solved the current situation of what you need to do. So it basically almost it has the level of complexity and it has the layers, but it almost like peels them out like an onion so that you don't have to feel overwhelmed when you first jump in, and you can like solve that first part and you're like, okay, now this door opened, we can start doing this other part of it.
There's also, so we mentioned that you can pick up items. There's some levels where they require you to use the item twice, which I think is very good, because you would assume that, oh, this item is one and done, let's move on to the next item, and it's not that simple. It's not just a process of elimination.
Yeah, exactly.
There are ways in which you were using the same item in different ways multiple times through the level, which I think keeps you on your toes. It's like a really good use.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, some very, very fun scenarios, and they definitely shake things up enough. I never felt bored or like we were doing the same thing twice.
That was the one. So yeah, the bomb diffuser was great. There's like one where you're supporting one of the teachers who's on a submarine, and you're communicating with them remotely.
Yeah, they're on like an actual mission, like a spy mission, basically.
Yeah. That was very cool. That was very challenging. That's the first time in the game we were both like, damn, this game is hard.
Yeah.
There's one later on that's like Squid Game, which was a little less good, I think. And then, there's...
I like the one with the rising water. There's one early on where you're kind of like,
good.
The water level is rising, and you see the physical time limit happening as you are kind of going through it alongside like the timer. And you're kind of just like climbing up the structure as you slowly unlock your way up.
The kitchen one where you're like sussing different poisons and things, that was very cool. Just a real good variety of things you wouldn't expect, and just constantly giving you nice surprises. And this again, I feel like this game isn't talked about enough, partly just because it's mainly a co-op game, and these games never get talked about enough. But this is a very, very well made game that is incredibly fun to play, 2-player co-op.
Yeah, I really, really liked it, and I think it's a great shout to hopefully come to Switch, because the thing with it already being built for crossplay means that you can then play it with people on other platforms as well, and that's a really.
I also think it was just the right level of difficulty for our brains.
Totally.
I think you're a bit better generally at puzzle games than me, but I'm okay, and I think overall this was like, if you've never played a puzzle game and go into this, I think it probably would be a bit more challenging. But a little bit,
but I think you can get through it.
Yeah, we've both played our fair share, and I think this game is in line with those mainly. Like it's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. If you are like an escape room aficionado, I know Jess over at Giant Bomb did a quick look for this, and she
used
was
to work in an escape room.
She worked in an escape room, and so she was like, yeah, it's okay, but it's like super easy. So like, if you're that person, then you probably won't get much out of it, because you already kind of know the types of puzzles that they use in escape rooms and stuff like that. So.
We neither of us have ever done a real escape room.
No, we should do that at some point in time.
We should. That would be good.
Yeah,
the gamification of the real world.
Yeah, I guess so. Escape Academy, check it out. Hopefully it does come to Switch at some point soon. Bally, I got a Switch Pro. It came out early. It's pretty cool.
Your uncle at Nintendo managed to get you one?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I sent you a video of Wind Waker running on it at like 60 FPS. Wow. It's pretty cool. So I got a Steam Deck. A Steam Deck came in the post, which I've been waiting for my play date for like a year and a half, and I ordered.
The Steam Deck's the one without the crank.
That's the one. Yeah, it's the one. Okay. It's the big one. It's the non-yellow one. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, I a couple of pieces of hardware that I've been waiting on here, and Steam Deck I ordered only like a month and a half ago, and I was like, yeah, I'll probably have to get this in like next year, early sometime, whatever.
And it's come before the Playdate.
And it came before the Playdate, and also Valve have now announced that you can just order a Steam Deck now, and you don't have to wait anymore. They'll just send it. So hey, they're on top of things, which is very cool. Anyway, it came. My first thought, it's fucking huge. Holy shit.
I was going to say, could you get any more opposite between the Playdate and the Steam Deck?
Yeah,
like both in terms of concept, size, style.
Yeah, exactly. I will need to do a picture-in-picture or like a side-by-side comparison when they come in, or when my Playdate comes in, which I think I just got an email that mine shipped, so that's fun.
Oh, really?
So yeah, check your emails, Bal. You might get one soon. But yeah, I've been playing the Steam Deck a lot, and I kind of want to talk about it in the context of Switch and like what is it like compared to the Switch? How does it feel? Because one of the things I did notice is after playing the Steam Deck for a while, I pick up the Switch. I'm like, man, the Switch is light and small and like agile and like it feels very, very easy for me to hold for long periods of time. You know, like when I'm playing Steam Deck in bed, it's often like propped up against my legs because it's so heavy that like holding it for long periods of time is actually kind of uncomfortable, if I'm honest. Whereas the Switch, I'm like, oh man, I could just fucking float with this thing, right? It's just like light as a feather compared to what the Steam Deck is doing. And I think that's really interesting because it does feel, you know, I was worried that maybe the Steam Deck would be like, oh, well, this just overtakes the Switch in every way. And like certainly from a power perspective and from like a visual perspective, of course, it's leaps and bounds above it, you know? I'm playing the sequel to AI, the Somnium Files, the Nirvana Initiative, which I picked up when it was on sale on Steam, and I obviously started playing that on my PC, but then because of Steam Cloud Saves with the Steam Deck, I basically installed it on there and I could just pick up exactly where I was on my Steam Deck. And that game is also on Switch. And that game on Switch, you know, runs at a low resolution. Frame rate is only 30. Like it has some hitching and stuff like that. Like it's a decent port, but it's not like amazing. And on Steam Deck, it's just like, well, this is flawless. This is just like pure 60, beautiful, looks amazing, runs so well. And then you can bring up the menu of like how much hours do I have left. And from like full charge, it can do like 4.5 hours on that game. And I'm like, well, this battery is also better than the Switch at the current moment in time as well. And the battery can also be changed. I could, if I wanted, like drop the frame rate down to 30 and, you know, have it last even longer for like 6 hours or whatever. So there's a level of customization there, but also like a fidelity that is obviously, you know, outdoing the Switch. But, you know, if I'm going to take something in a bag on a journey, like a Steam Deck it's just so large, you know, like it's so unwieldy in that way. And I think it is a really cool thing as a handheld, but it's just far less portable, I would say, than what the Switch offers, which is, you know, it basically, it just gives you that option, right? Of like, do you want something that is going to be, you know, more of a portable option, more accessible, more easy to use, or do you want something that's just, you know, it's a bit better, but it's just a bit different in terms of its approach. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff with it, right? I've been diving into putting emulation on there. I've got, you know, GameCube games and GBA games and, you know, PS2 games and all that sort of stuff, just like trying to figure out this system. And I have to say that this really is a tinkerer's system at the moment. I would not recommend it to anyone who plays console games, basically. I wouldn't recommend it to people who don't understand PCs and the way they work and the ways that you have to like move system files around. And there's a lot of troubleshooting, right? There's a lot of like, okay, well, in order to get AI the Somnium Files to work in the way that I want it to, I have to go into the control system and turn off touchscreen so that I don't accidentally like go back to the menu when I lightly brush the touchscreen, right? So I turn off the touchscreen, but this introduces a problem. The problem being that when you launch the game, it comes up with a menu that you usually see on your PC in a window that's the video options menu. So the video options menu comes up first, and that is only accessible through the touchscreen. So what have I done? I've created two controller profiles so that when I boot up the game, I have one controller profile that has a touchscreen turned on, and then I can just switch over to the other controller profile that has the touchscreen turned off, so that I can easily switch, you know, when I boot up the game into those different modes. It's that type of like really minutia type shit that I love, because I love like getting deep into these systems and like getting things to work. There's almost a fucked up thing with people like this who go in to buy these systems and they almost spend more time setting them up and tinkering tinkering with them than they do actually playing the games. And I don't want to fall into that category, because I do, like with my Ambinic.
It's like so far you've spent more time tinkering than playing games.
That is certainly true, but that will always happen when you first get one of these systems. Yeah, but for me, yeah, I generally, with the Ambinic, I do play a lot of games on it, and I know a lot of people who get those types of systems, set them up and never actually play games on them, right?
Say you just wanted to use it to play your Steam library and none of this other fancy whiz-bang stuff.
Yeah.
Would that have been a lot more easy, or is there still like quite a lot of hurdles to jump?
It can be. So basically the way the Steam Deck is built, it's built on Linux, right? Linux is like the third platform, let's say, for PCs, right? You've got Mac and you've got Mac OS and you've got Windows, right? Those are the two most dominant like PC kind of OSs. Linux is open source, right? So anyone can like tinker with it, and like it doesn't hold your hand at all. Like you have to just like look up guides, and like it's much more like I don't really know a lot about Linux if I'm honest, but like the problem is that a lot of these games on Steam are built for Windows. So the Steam Deck has a thing called Proton. Proton is basically a layer which translates Windows stuff into Linux stuff. So that's basically how it gets a lot of Steam games to run. It's using this program Proton to do a translation thing where it basically allows you to run Windows made games on this Linux based system. And when you go through the Steam library, there'll be a lot of games with a green tick mark, and those green tick marks are games that like they're verified, they run great on Steam Deck. You can just press the play button and they'll run, and you won't have to worry about it. There are other ones where it's like you can, but there are certain things that might not work, and there are other ones which are just like, this is untested, we don't know, no one's done the work on it, no one's verified it, we have no idea. And the community is great with this stuff, because there's a whole website called ProtonDB where you can go onto that website and type in any game on Steam, and it will give you a rating of like, is this silver, is this gold, is this platinum, like how well does this work? And there'll be a bunch of comments down below that say, okay, you can get Trails in the Sky to run, but you need to use this version of Proton to get it to run. You need to go into the settings and move this .ini file to this place. Like, there will be people who have done the work there to figure it out. But again, if you want to play a particular game and it doesn't work out the box, you're going to have to do a bit of tinkering to get it to work, right? So if you really just want to go there and not do anything, you're going to be limited to like a smaller selection of games, like only the ones that Steam have verified themselves and have the tick box. And even in those cases, you might come across weird stuff, right? I think the nice thing about the Switch and consoles is you never have to worry about any of that stuff. You just press the button and it goes, and there's no menus, there's no nothing, it will just do it for you, right? So for example, on Switch, when you go back to the home menu, the game almost goes into a suspend state, and then you just like are on the menu, and you can sleep it and whatever, and it's fine. On Steam Deck, when you go back to the home menu, the game is still running. So like I go back to the home menu and the music from the game is still playing in the background. I'm like, well, this isn't the experience that I was expecting, like it almost has those rough around the edges things that come from a device that is built for you to customize your own liking. I feel like there's probably a way for me to get it so that it does suspend the game fully, but I just haven't figured it out yet, maybe, or maybe someone will and someone will tell me. But like, that is kind of the joy of it, is just kind of wandering in the dark and poking at things and see what works, right? Like, I had a fantastic time getting God of War from PS2, God of War and God of War 2, got them on there, and I was like, all right, I need these in widescreen. Okay, figured out how to get them in widescreen. Go into the specific emulator that does widescreen, go into emulation settings, set that all up, great, perfect. Okay, now I need to do save states. How do I do save states? Okay, well, save states are bound to specific keys on the keyboard, so let's go up and look up.
Like basically building your game.
Yes, kind of, yeah. So I'm looking up, okay, let's go to PCSX2. What are the traditional key bindings for save stating on PCSX2? Okay, so you have to hold shift and press F1 to save, hold shift, press F3 to load. So I go into the controller binding menu, and you can bind traditional keyboard keys to buttons on the Steam Deck. So I go and I'm like, okay, R4 and R5 I'm going to bind to shift, and L4 and L5 I'm going to bind to F1 and F3. And then what I can do is I can go back into the game after binding those controls and then hold down those buttons, and it will save state and save load just by clicking the back buttons on the Steam Deck. And then I'm like, okay, perfect, it's set up, and now I can play God of War. Have I played God of War? No, not yet. But I will, okay, it will happen. But like that's the kind of joy in the process for me, is just making sure this all is like nice and works. And I showed you the interface for Emulation Station, which is like this kind of front end that you use to access emulated games. And it's just like really pretty pretty, right? Like it has the box art, it has like little videos that play, it has this kind of like on the front end of it, it shows you different artwork from different games. So like there's a big Wario for the GBA one, there's like a dark kind of Samus fan art that's in the GameCube one. Like it's just very pretty, you know, and that's almost part of the experience, is like making a pretty nice looking menu screen from all the stuff that you do. And this extends even to like non-Steam games. So I was trying to get Crosscode to work, and I own Crosscode because it was part of one of the bundles, one of the itch.io bundles from, they'd done one for the Black Lives Matter stuff in 2020, but then also there was the Ukraine bundle. So I've got like hundreds of games on itch.io that I can just use. And so I downloaded that from itch. But you can turn the Steam Deck from regular mode into desktop mode. So you switch to desktop mode and it basically just looks like a PC. It looks like just a regular interface, and you can attach a mouse and keyboard to it and go around and use that. And that's actually the best way to navigate the desktop mode, because it is a little bit finicky using the touch. You have like these light touch pads on the Steam Deck that you can use, but using that to navigate around, I was able to download Crosscode, add it as a Steam game, and then go and find the artwork. So I went to steam.db, and they have different artwork that you can then attach, so that then when you launch into the game on the front end of the Steam OS, then it actually looks like it's part of your library. But there were a lot of issues, and there still are. Like, I can't really get Crosscode to work properly, because when I do boot it up, I get to a section where I have to use the dual analog stick, and for some reason the controller binding, the dual analog stick just doesn't work properly. It just, like, I'm like trying to spin it around and it doesn't like work in the way that it should do. So there's still like troubleshooting that I have to do with that. And if you're playing on another console like Switch, you just buy the game and it just works, right? And that's not the case here. But it's also because I've not bought Crosscode on Steam. I have got it through another PC storefront, have downloaded it and tried to like attach it to Steam in this like back end way, and it doesn't quite work. But there are like official solutions for certain games. So like games that I got for free on the Epic Store, or games that I have on GOG. There's a launcher called the Heroic Launcher, where you download that and you can just access all of your games from those libraries directly through Steam. So you can do that. You can launch this Heroic Launcher, and I downloaded a Plague Tale Innocence, which I was playing because the second game's coming out.
Would you say that's the game you've played the most of so far, or?
No, I would say I've probably played the most of Going Under, which is a roguelike that I had on Steam for a while that I wanted to check out, which is really cool. And also AI, the Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative, basically. I think it's just called AI. Yeah, it's AI, the Somnium Files, Nirvana. It's a long fucking name. Anyway, those are the ones I probably played the most time into so far. But Plague Tale is the one that I want to focus on.
Right.
Once I'm
You've
done.
You've not got Game Pass going yet.
No, Game Pass is a harder, much more difficult thing to do, because it's so ingrained into Windows that there's no real solution. The only solution is using the cloud-based stuff, which I did do a bit of streaming. So if you have Steam open on your PC, it will recognize games that you have installed on your PC. So I booted up Final Fantasy XIV and streamed it from my PC to my Steam Deck. So that's definitely a possibility. So that's something you can do. But when it comes to actual Game Pass stuff, you have to do it via the cloud stuff, which I don't have Ultimate, so I actually don't have access to the cloud stuff, which is a little bit frustrating. So I can't do anything with that at the moment. I'm sure someone will figure out how to do it eventually, because all the stuff online, all the YouTube tutorials, it's super easy. I say super easy for someone like me who understands some of this stuff. It is super easy to set up. And I think that it's only going to get easier as time goes on, as people have like ways to do these things and bring things up. But like, my biggest wow moment was playing a Plague Tale Innocence and being like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is like a AAA looking game that is running at 60 FPS on this handheld screen, like beautiful, gorgeous. Also, the speakers on the Steam Deck are fucking incredible. Holy shit, they sound so good, and they can get extremely loud as well. Like, they are already, like, I have it at maybe a quarter or a third volume, and it's already like a really good like sound. So it gets extremely loud and also like very high quality from a sound standpoint. But yeah, there's been a lot of like fun tinkering going on, and playing older games. I've got Chibi Robo, so my GameCube collection right now, I've got Chibi Robo. I need to download Doshin the Giant. I definitely want to check that out. I need to play obviously the Fire Emblem games as well. I've already played Path of Radiance, but I'd like to have that on Steam Deck as well, just to tool around with it. And there's a bunch of other stuff like older games that I want to I was asking people on Twitter, what's the best SSX game? What was the game of the PS2 era on SSX that was the best? So I'm trying to find out what that is so I can put that onto the PS2 emulator.
You play like the Burnout games.
Yeah, could do. There's loads of stuff, and that's the fun thing here is just like, you can just go and find stuff, and there's
but now you've got like specific consoles set up. Playing another game that's on that console will be a lot easier, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, you have to get games onto the Steam Deck in the first place, which is its whole own rabbit hole, which I fell down. Which is, I am putting them on an SD card, so I bought like a 128 gig SD card where I can load all those ROMs onto. However, when you format the SD card on the Steam Deck, it formats it to a Linux format, which means that when you plug it into a Windows PC, it says, we don't recognize this might be corrupted or something. It's because it's built for a Linux format. So once you format it to the Steam Deck, you then can't just plug the SD card into a PC to get games on it, which is annoying. So I was like, how do I get games onto it now? I have the SD card. So I used a hard drive, and my hard drive was able to connect to both. But then my hard drive, when I plugged it back into my PC after using it on the Steam Deck, suddenly wasn't recognized anymore. I was like, oh shit, this is not good. And then I realized that I just needed to download a driver to get my hard drive to work again. So I don't actually know if the issue was with it plugging into Linux and then not being recognized, or if it was the fact that I just didn't have the right driver for it on my PC. But I'm scared now to use that hard drive because it has a lot of my own backed up stuff on it, so I don't want to use it. I then found a program that basically transfers data wirelessly from a folder on your PC to a folder on the Steam Deck. So you drop it into the folder on your PC and it just appears on the Steam Deck. And then on the Steam Deck, you can drag it from there into the SD card. But then that creates problems on the Steam Deck that if I move it from there, or if I move it from the folder on Windows and take it away, it disappears also from the Steam Deck. But for some reason, the data is still there. So in the back end, it still registers as having gigabytes taken up by it, even though the file has disappeared. Which is like its own rabbit hole of like, then I downloaded a file management system and then went in and deleted that data manually. Like, Bali, this device would give you a fucking heart attack. Like, the amount of tinkering I have done.
But everything you're saying makes me, like we've had our discussion before, is the biggest reason I think Nintendo won't be that concerned.
Yes,
is that
totally.
Until they can create something that would appeal to someone like me and requires considerably less tinkering, I just don't see how it will become mainstream in the way that the Switch is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a reason they're not selling this in stores at the moment. It's because it's just not consumer ready. And like, I don't know if it ever will be, because fundamentally this is just still a PC at the end of the day, right? Like,
they could do two SKUs. They could do one that becomes even more complicated and high end and this, that, and the other, and then they can definitely put something together that would be at least slightly simpler.
Yeah, at least slightly simpler. I don't think Valve would ever lock things off, though. They're not that kind of company. They're not going to make a closed source system. It's just against that complete ethos of the company, right? Like, it's just not going to happen.
You could make something that seems closed off, but then there's actually some...
And to be honest with you, the Steam Deck kind of is that at the moment, because, like, if you are someone who just doesn't know any of this stuff and you just want to download Steam games, you can just kind of do that. You don't have to, like, in order to get to desktop mode, you have to do very specific things, holding down the power button for long enough to bring up a menu to then go and switch to desktop mode, right? You can't just accidentally stumble into it.
We were discussing, like, if you lived closer to me, I could probably get by having one, and you could...
Yeah, because you know, you'd be like, hey, I have a problem, come over and fix it for me, right? Like, I can troubleshoot.
With me in Edinburgh and you in London, it's like, it's just, it just
wouldn't work.
I'm just going to encounter an issue every single day.
Yeah, pretty much. Honestly, you will. Yeah, it definitely will happen. But I think this thing is fucking fantastic. It's so cool, and you know, it almost is a bit of a glimpse of the future, because it almost, to me, is like, well, this is kind of the power level that you might expect from a Switch 2 or a Switch successor.
Does this make you think, right, come on, Nintendo, get your finger out. Let's get a bit more juice in the next Switch.
I think so. It really does, because, like, playing... It's just like seeing how crisp and sharp everything looks on that screen, and it is a weird resolution. It's 1200 by 800, so it's like almost a square resolution in a way that doesn't adhere to the 16 by 9 stuff that most games, work on. And
that's very interesting. They'd go for that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why they did. It also feels like, you know, the bezels could be increased, so you could have. It almost feels like you need to have a Switch OLED version of the Steam Deck that has a bigger screen and stuff like that to fix some of these issues, and I don't know, make it a bit more portable, a bit more compact. But yeah, so far I'm having a great time with it. And, you know, had to play my old favorite Metroid Fusion on there. And I was like, do I really want to play GBA games on a screen this fucking large? And, like, they do look so big. Like, I boot up Golden Sun as well. I'm like, wow, this is like, I don't know that GBA games were meant to be played on a screen this large. However, they look sharp as hell. Like, oh my God, it's so, like, HD in a way that is pretty stunning. And, you know, the D-pad is also excellent. So, like, if you do want to play retro games on this thing, excellent, really, really nice D-pad, and the buttons and everything feel good. And yeah, like, I didn't think I would use the back paddles, the back buttons at all, because that's the sort of stuff you get on, like, the Xbox Elite controller. I'm like, I don't know what you're ever going to use that for. But fundamentally, because this is a system that has, like, save states and stuff like that, that's the use of them, right? You can use every other button, and you actually have, like, dedicated buttons that you can use for save stating and loading and for doing all these other options, which is really nice. You can use it for, like, fast forward speed if you want, you know, do turbo mode and things like that. It's such a great little thing. I say little, great big thing that I enjoy a lot so far. And, you know, when my power went out yesterday, I was like, you know what? Hey, I can still play my PC games because I've got them on here, and I can play AI the Somnium Files and have a great time. And that's what I did while I was waiting under candlelight, waiting for all the power to be turned on again. So, Steam Deck versus Switch. I still think that the Switch comes out on top in terms of just affordability and functionality out the box. Just obviously you're lacking in power, and that's the biggest difference. But you know, Steam Deck, if you want something that is a little bit more juicy and you want to just get in there and get your hands in it, get dirty, then Steam Deck is definitely worth checking out. I think it's really fantastic, a lot of fun. And also, nice. I can play Wind Waker HD on it, and I can't, thank you Nintendo, on my Nintendo Switch yet. So, yeah, I did send, that was the video that I sent you and our friend Ali T, and I was like, hey, look at this magic. And like, talking about the back paddles, I could hold the back paddles down to bring up the touchscreen like the Wii U, and because Steam Deck has a touchscreen, it's almost like a perfect Wii U emulation device. It's kind of awesome. It's kind of awesome. So, very cool. Happy with that. Cool. Bally, you've got one more little thing to talk about before we move on.
Yeah, just wanted to say I've started Bayonetta 2 as part of our game trade, and I'm about 3 chapters in.
Nice.
Having a good time so far, but I'll talk about that next time.
Lovely, yes. I've also started Owlboy. I started it at your house, actually, when I was there, and I think that game's really cool also, but I need to get back to it. I need to, stop tinkering with Steam Deck and get back to playing Owlboy on my Switch, which I will do, and hopefully we can talk about those games in the future. But we are going to go on over to the next segment, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break talking about your emails. See you in a bit.
Welcome back to the second part of today's show. It is time for your emails once again. But as usual, we got to put out the call. MBZ, we got to put out the call. It's ThisNintendoLife at gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife at gmail.com. Please send in your emails. We are always in need of more. Should also say we've got a channel on our Discord server dedicated to emails. So if you want to post over there, that'd be most welcome as well.
Absolutely,
your comments, your questions.
If you've never written in before, write in, because it's nice hearing from new people. It's good fun.
We love it.
Yeah.
Our first email this week is from Chad from Lincoln, Nebraska. It says, hey guys, I'm sipping bourbon and playing Gunman Clive on my new to me 3DS. It's a good combination and got me wondering about your drink of choice, both in general and for gaming sessions. Does it depend on genre? I'm normally a gin and tonic drinker, which goes great with Ollie Ollie World, Celeste, etc. Beer and sports? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Chad. That's It's an interesting one because I generally don't drink on my own when I'm at home. I will generally only drink socially. I know that my sister and my dad are very different. Like they will just drink whenever and wherever. They'll just like, it's Friday, let's get a drink in. And in those situations, yeah, I'll have something. So usually that's the situation where I'm having a drink and playing a game at the same time. Is like I'll have something that someone else has had in the house, and I'm just gonna have it as I jump into a game of Overwatch or something like that, right? Just something kind of chill in the evening. But yeah, I think there's ways in which you can kind of pair drinks together with games in a fun way, and there's almost that tipping point, right? And I think this is the case with lots of different activities with alcohol, but there's that point where you're like just buzzed enough to like have almost a bit of a weird advantage, and you're not kind of like over the top where you're fucking up, basically. So like you get to that point where you're like slightly drunk but not drunk enough to be like terrible at things, but it actually kind of almost feels like you're made better by it. You know what I mean, Bally? Like you kind of like have that kind of like you can almost perform slightly better because your kind of inhibitions are kind of like dropped off a little bit,
Yeah, I mean I really don't drink and play games at all, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I will, if I'm not going out for like a meal or a drink with people, the only time I'm drinking at home is like watching sport. So like it's like, right, the Edinburgh, so I follow Edinburgh rugby very closely, watch their games like every week, and me and Caroline will be like, right, let's have a beer and watch some rugby, and that'll be like us having a couple of beers, and that's about it. I'll never then like continue that drink into a gaming session later in the night. I'll just switch to something and just...
Do you think that's because you're so, when you have a controller, you're already holding something, and so there's that almost difficult... It's the thing of like, if I wanted to stop snacking, and, get healthier or whatever, I would just play games constantly after work and not do anything else, because my hands just get so distracted and get so busy, my mind like taken away from it. When it's passive activity, when it's watching a TV show or a movie or something like that, I always have a snack in front of me just because I'm just a broken person, and I love nuts and crisps and all that sort of shit. So I'm just like there doing that. And when I'm playing games, I'm usually not. And the reason is, well, first of all, I don't want to get a fucking like Cheetos dust on my controller, but God, also, it's just inconvenient. It's just not easy to play stuff but also eat at the same time because your hands are already preoccupied. Which I think with a drink is easier because you can put it down and pick it up without much trouble, and there's no...
Especially like your Overwatch example, there's so much loading time. Well, at the moment there's a hell of a lot of loading time, but I just mean generally between games that you can have like a little drink in between for sure.
Yeah, totally. Would you say that your go-to is beer? Do you have any other drinks of choice at home?
Yeah, I like bottled beer, generally lager, and then if I'm out, I normally go for like a more interesting... I do like a fruity IPA, like some kind of interesting craft beer that's maybe got a kick of fruit. Or I know when I was last in America back for Ali T's wedding, at this stage, America's really into like sour beers at the moment, and I feel like they're not really a big thing in the UK at the moment. And I really, really liked the couple I tried. Not that I can remember their names. Otherwise, I'll just like standard lager. What do we have in the fridge? Like Birra Moretti, like Italian lager. Nothing too fancy.
No spirits. Not just not shotgunning vodka.
I really like whiskey. I just don't drink it enough.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I think my rule with whiskey is if I'm out in Scotland, I'll try and have a whiskey, and then if I'm elsewhere, I won't bother because it's way too expensive.
Oh,
but, You get whiskey's like no more expensive than any other spirit in Scotland, so it's like That's true. It's a good place to drink it here.
Yeah, totally. Or like mixers of some kind. That's usually like, when you're at uni at a club, that's when you're getting mixers, right?
Yeah, my go-to mixer was like Jack Daniels and Coke. That was my go-to.
What about vodka Iron Brew, the old Scottish classic?
That's all right. I should say more widely, I only actually drink 4 drinks.
Okay.
There's including non-alcohol. Everyday drinks. I am constantly on a bottle of water. I've got like a a reusable plastic bottle that is constantly topped up, and I'm constantly drinking. And that's what I'm drinking the most when I'm gaming.
Yes.
And I must get through like 3 or 4 of these a day. So
yeah, I drink a fuck ton of water, but I also put a bunch of ice in it as well, because I have to have the coldest possible. Like, even in the dead of winter where everyone else is like drinking hot, warm drinks.
Would you do that even in Scotland, or is that a London thing? Because
I think I do it less. I do it less in Scotland. This gets into some weird shit with like water quality, but like London water is trash fucking garbage. Holy shit. I cannot stand it. It is absolutely disgusting. When you grow up in Scotland and you have water in Scotland, you come down to London, it is a nightmare. I don't understand how people live their lives drinking straight from the tap in London. It is absolutely awful. The water quality is so fucked up down here. It's terrible.
I actually had for the first time last night, it's just gotten cold enough where I drank some water in the middle of the night from my bottle, and it was very cold.
Man,
the bedroom was cool.
That's the benefit of Scotland, right? It's just the coldness of it that I do water. Like a lot, you know. So when the thing I do when I go back home, when I'm in my house, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get a glass of water from the tap, and I'm just gonna drink it, and I just like sit there for a moment and just like kind of savor it. I'm like, I can just do this. I can just drink from the tap and it tastes good. Whereas in London, that is part of the reason why I have ice is I have to make it as cold as possible to make it even palatable to enjoy. So I am constantly using ice here.
Do you always drink it in a glass, or do you do bottled? Or
I always do a glass. I prefer glass for water always.
That's high stakes for such a electronics person,
Yeah, I know, but I have like small enough glasses. I've got like a what do you call it, a coaster here that I have it on top of, and I use tissues to like because obviously when you have ice in a glass, it gets a condensation on the bottom, so it gets kind of like wet on the coaster, so I have to like dab it off a bunch of times and stuff. But yeah, I'm generally quite careful with that stuff, even though yes, it is right next to a Wii U and a PS4 and a very expensive monitor and my keyboard and everything. I probably should be a bit more careful, but it hasn't gone wrong yet, so I'm okay, I think.
The other 3 drinks I drink are, I'll have a glass of fresh orange juice every single morning with my Weetabix. That's my go-to. That's a little vitamin C boost.
Sure.
Every time I get a fish supper or I'm eating salt and vinegar crisps, I like a can of Iron Brew. Often when I get a takeaway, I love a cold can of Iron Brew. It's very good. And then the only other drink I really drink is like bottles of beer with rugby games. Yeah. And those are like the 4 things I drink. That's it.
I'm sure we've talked about Iron Brew in the past, but for the Americans listening, Iron Brew is a Scottish drink that is orange, very much in line with, Scotland, I guess.
But
ginger.
It does not taste orange.
It doesn't, I don't know if I can even describe the taste of Iron Brew. It is almost inscrutable.
It's very manufactured. I think it's closest to bubble gum.
Sure.
But there's some. It's like a bitter bubble gum.
Yeah, I mean, the Bar, who's the company who like does Iron Brew, they also make like bubble gum flavored drinks as well.
Oh yeah, there's a whole series of like cream soda, lemonade,
cream soda.
Cola.
I used to have so much cream soda at school, like the tuck shop at school. I would get cream soda all the goddamn time. I like that
Bar's cream soda.
Yes, Bar's cream soda. Yeah, exactly. Which was great. But yeah, Iron Brew is.
Scotland is supposedly one of the only places in the world where the #1 soft drink is not Coca-Cola, and it's Iron Brew. So that's a fun stat.
Although Iron Brew has like it's got nerfed, is what we'll say. They patched Iron Brew. They made it less sugary, so I don't think it's quite at its peak condition.
It was a fit in with sugar legislation.
Yes,
in
there
Scotland,
was legislation about it.
They would have to pay a high tax to keep their original formula, and they chose not to.
They chose not to. So I'm sure you can buy very expensive like original cans of Iron Brew out there.
Oh yeah,
but. I'm sure people are hoarding them because they don't exist anymore, basically. But yeah, in terms of like games to pair with drinks, I do think Overwatch is a good one. Like, there's a level at which like when I'm kind of buzzed to just like, I'm really nailing this match. I'm like in the zone. I'm just like hitting all my headshots, like that type of thing. Competitive games, I think you can get a bit of an edge with it when you've had a beer or two. And for me, I generally like wit beers, which are ones that you usually find in like Germany or like when we're in Amsterdam.
I like those as well. They're really nice.
Yeah, my dad basically got me onto those when I was younger, and so those when I go for beer, I usually go for like a Hochharten or something like that, some kind of wit beer. I like those. Dingers are good. Yeah, I like those in the summer a lot. That's usually any time of the year though, even if it's not the summer, I will usually go towards those. Those are my preferred beers.
There's some in Brussels I think it was wit beers that they'd serve with a lemon in them.
Oh, really? Yeah, I
Very
think that
nice,
does
yeah.
happen sometimes, yeah, which is interesting. So yeah, that's probably my go-to. I don't get too crazy with things. I'm not a wine person. I know my sister's a big wine person at this point.
Wow.
But yeah, wine's okay. Like, I'll have a wine, or I do like a prosecco. Often when we're at like family gatherings, prosecco is always out, and that's usually what we have, which is, I guess prosecco is
very nice.
Prosecco is
Yeah.
like basically a cheaper champagne almost, right? It's like
I think it's the thing that gets me buzzed the absolute quickest.
Oh, yeah,
for sure. It's
definitely.
like Prosecco champagne. It's like, what?
yeah.
Oof,
I would say
straight in
summer is usually when I'm drinking most, because people are outside, and there's Pimm's or whatever comes out, and prosecco, and yeah, that stuff can get dangerous quickly if you have too much of it. But yeah, I would say like I'd say like prosecco and platformers probably goes quite nicely together.
Platformers.
I think that's like, you can kind of get,
That's a
you
good
can,
podcast name. Prosecco. and Platformers.
yeah. Let's do a spin-off show where we only drink prosecco.
We just play platformers drunk out of our minds.
Absolutely,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Everyone's going to write in wanting that now, but
Yeah,
oh well.
absolutely. Patreon.
we can make it
exclusive.
a top tier Patreon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tier. There we go.
So yeah, I don't know what other genres kind of like work with different alcohol. I guess, if you want to be like the wine and cheese gamer, right? Like, you're like, oh, I'm playing my very high quality, I don't know, visual novel. I feel like Ace Attorney and wine go together, maybe in a weird way that almost like opposite to one another, where one is
Also, like JRPGs, turn-based games, like you can literally put down the controller anytime and have a big old drink if you want, and then keep going. Anything that takes the action out of it, I think.
Yeah, if you're gonna go for like
great.
harder liquor, if you're gonna have whiskey or rum or whatever, then I think JRPGs work with that, because there's less.
Yeah.
There's like,
Plus, there's a lot of emotional moments that you need that drink to just get through, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it'll punch up those kind of emotional hits, but also because it's turn-based, then you don't need to worry about dexterity or like quick reactions. So like getting absolutely sloshed, you'll still be able to get through it. And then you get to those moments like in Xenoblade 3 where I was crying without alcohol, and then you're just like you're absolutely sobbing. It's just like you're dying on the floor at that point. That's what you want to be. So yeah, that's what you're looking for. Anyway, fun question. Thanks, Chad. That was enjoyable.
Good question. Our next email is from Mike C, who says, "Hi, Bally and MBZ. I've recently completed Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and boy, is the ending a treat. I'm pretty sure they drafted in some help from Platinum Games to put that one together. For me, it really elevated the game from an 8 or 8.5 to a solid 9. I think back to when I completed The Outer Worlds, where the ending left me feeling a bit flat. Do you think games with multiple endings tend to have worse conclusions than those which are more linear? Also, how important is the ending for you in terms of your opinion of a game? Are there good games which have been ruined by a disappointing ending, or in my case with Kirby, games where the ending has really lifted the whole thing? On a related note, the post-credits part of Kirby are great too. What games have good content after the credits have rolled, and do you always bother with that stuff? Do game creators take a big risk in saving content for after the end of the main game, where only a small proportion of gamers might get to or bother with? Thanks for the fantastic podcast. And if you answer my question, I might even sign up to your Patreon.
Well, there we go. You're now contractually bound, Mike. So off you go. Go over to the website. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting one, because I think we had a similar experience with Kirby, where I feel like the end of that game, I was maybe flagging a little bit. I was like, okay, we're using the same power-ups. We're kind of just doing...
Very weak middle.
Yeah, and we're kind of like doing the same stuff. Like, there wasn't enough new abilities for Kirby to do his mouthful mode stuff with. And I was like, okay. And then you get to the end of that game, and it's just like a fireworks display of just like, as he says, almost Platinum Games level of just like things start popping off, and I was like, wow, this really like almost elevated it in my estimation. So I think it can definitely have an impact on you, right? Like I'm still in love with Xenoblade 3. I think it's one of the best games I've ever played, but I did think the ending wasn't like quite at the level that I wanted it to be, right? Like it was really good, but it didn't like absolutely knock it out of the park for me in a way that I was maybe hoping for. So I wouldn't say that like took it down in my estimation, but maybe it made me think about the other parts of the games more fondly than the ending itself, and maybe just recontextualize things a little bit more for me. And maybe it's one of those things where once they come out with the DLC for that game, I might be even more on board because they might have left questions open that then get answered, as part of that DLC. And it's also one of those games where actually reflecting back on it and going back and watching other people play through it, I like it a bit more than I did when I think I first played it. Like, there's almost that first experience where you have expectations for something, especially when, like, the ending of Xenoblade 1 is, like, one of my favorite endings in games, right? I do think that there's a high bar that you have to hit, basically. And when it doesn't get hit, it just maybe knocks it down a little bit. I wouldn't say it would have knocked it down, like, score-wise for me at all, but yeah, I think that it definitely has an effect. So are there any endings, Bally, for you that kind of like, or games that were affected by the fact that the ending was slightly different or off or better?
If controversial opinion, if I had to take beginning, middle, and end, I actually think the ending's the least important out of beginning, middle, and end, to be honest. I think if you're talking about game and a good pacing, let's say an average, 12-hour game, for me, the beginning and middle are more important than the end. And that's partly because, like, I already know that once I'm past the middle, whether the end is good or not, I've got enough energy to get through it, whether I'm having a good time or not.
And you also know what your kind of opinion is on the game by that point, right? Journey Before Destination definitely is kind of like my mantra when it comes to certain games, like long games especially, like big RPGs and stuff. Like, it's very different. But I think
that games where the ending soured me a bit, it's often to do with difficulty more than plot, to be honest.
Yeah, it's mechanically driven.
Often. And that, like, I could talk about so many JRPGs where, like, the final boss is just too difficult, or the game just doesn't have a setting to turn down the difficulty. That's like such a easy one that Square cocked up with games like Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, I had a rough time with that final boss. I had a really rough time with the Xenoblade 1 final boss. And like, maybe that did sour my overall experience a bit, but I still would stand by beginning and middle are more important. Trying to think of games with like incredible endings. Like, Kirby does have a good ending, but like, I think I was already too soured by the middle to be like, right, and that's an 8 or a 9 in my mind. I think by that point,
I think like there are really good endings that can elevate a game that you've already been enjoying. So like for me, Splatoon 3, the end of that campaign, I was like, I already was in love with this game from a single player perspective, and then the ending, the final boss, is so fantastic and like enjoyable that I was like fully on board. That said, there is a phase to that final boss that I thought was annoying and bad, and I didn't enjoy that much, and that didn't fully sour me on it, but like it definitely is like a wrinkle in it a little bit of like, I want to be saying like the end of this game is all the way fantastic, but it isn't quite all the way fantastic. It has like a great like final boss, and then there's like a post final boss thing that I'm like, well, this just maybe could have been done a little bit better, and like, there's definitely elements like that.
Games like Tunic from this year, or Metroid Dread from last year, like both those games have fantastic endings, but I think they have really strong middles as well. So like, I think trying to find games that have weak middles and strong endings, I agree Kirby's one, but I don't think there's as many out there that I can think of off the top of my head, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to find ones like that. I think Tunic is an interesting one because I almost think of it as two different games, right? Like, I like the Zelda kind of run around stuff, but I was like, the combat gets a little bit annoying and it's just a little bit frustrating, so I just turned it onto invincible mode, and I did all the end game like boss stuff, and I was like, this is fine. Like, I do like the combat stuff in this game, and it's all right. But it was when the switch flipped in Tunic that like it became a completely different game, and it almost 180'd me on like not my entire opinion on the game, because I think up until that point I was really enjoying it. I thought like the kind of like the weird kind of inscrutability of it and all of that stuff was great, and I thought the level design was great, but for me it was like an 8 out of 10, right? And then you get to that other stuff, and it almost like just the ending and like the final stuff you have to do in that game makes it like a 10, right? Like, for me, it just absolutely skyrockets it in a way that I haven't seen in many other games before, and I think that's kind of a special case. But for me, the ending and the final stuff you do in Tunic also just almost just makes it so much better than that start. Maybe you feel a little bit differently about it, but for me, it like really skyrocketed it.
Really, I think I was a lot more into the main game and the combat and all that for sure. But even as high as I was on the main game, I that ending did skyrocket it for me for sure. Yeah, like really, really cool stuff. I'm just trying to think other games.
I think for you, the infamous one on this podcast is that I think the ending of Inside soured you on Inside a little bit.
Oh, that's a great example. That's a great example of a game that I thought had a very strong beginning and middle, and then the end has just left me very sour on the game generally.
Yeah.
I say sour on the game. I still think that game, but like mechanically and puzzle wise, and the setting, like, is all fantastic. I wanted more from that ending than what you got.
You wanted more resolution, basically.
Wanted more resolution for sure. Yeah.
Are there games with like multiple ending? Like, how do you feel? I know that we generally are not big fans of multiple endings to video games,
right.
Because I'm not someone who's going to play through something again just to see this one cutscene at the end or whatever that's slightly different. You know, it's never been something that I'm that into. That said, you know, you do get like a bonus cutscene in Breath of the Wild if you do all the shrines, for example, right? You don't get that otherwise. Or
I never knew that. Do you?
I'm pretty sure. Oh, maybe it's just doing all the divine beasts. I'm pretty sure you get like that last cutscene you don't get unless you do. There is a certain condition you need to do in order to get it. Which again, I don't think that's like a game-changing, world-ending thing, but it's a nice bonus, I think, for people who do it.
I definitely think Tunic's another game that bucks the trend for me, where I agree I don't like multiple endings, but Tunic basically does have two endings, and I like what it does with those two alternate endings.
I would also argue that like it's kind of a Nier Automata situation where you don't know the true situation until you've got the proper ending. Like the proper ending really is the real ending of the game, and you shouldn't stop after you get the bad ending, basically. Is my feeling on it with that game in particular. But
and then, well, actually, ending of Tunic's remarkably similar to Hollow Knight, and Hollow Knight's a game where I really dislike the fact it's got like all these multiple endings. I would have loved more one united final boss, final thing, and because it's such a long game on top of that by the time you're there, I was very done with it.
You're just kind of exhausted, and that final boss on its own is really hard. But then the idea that you need to get this other stuff and then go back, and then you need to be that final boss, and then there's another final boss after it. It's even more brutal, even harder. And if you die, you have to beat that first phase again to then just get to the second phase again. It's just like,
and they're really going for like we want to make the hardest, most challenging, ultimate Metroidvania. They're definitely going for that with that game. And maybe I just don't have the gaming chops to quite get up there, but I Hollow Knight's a good example, and again, like, I would have loved it more if just Hollow Knight ended a bit more similar to a game like Ori, where it's just like, what is one linear thing, and I'll take that, thank you very much, that was fantastic, great, move on. I think that's also the nature of this podcast, is we like to beat games, and when you're thrown multiple endings in your face, it's like, do I beat the game here or do I beat it there? And I just want this thing done, but I also want to get a full experience, and it's that debate in your head of, have I seen enough or do I want the full experience? And I think with Tunic it felt very obvious what the full experience was, where with Hollow Knight it was like, I don't want to do this extra stuff.
Yeah, and I think with Tunic, like, there's so much more to do in that kind of like actual ending stuff versus Hollow Knight is just one extra kind of stage of a boss. I know that Hollow Knight has a lot of optional stuff in it. That game has like, you know, arena stuff and like, you know, other extra like platforming areas like the Path of Pain and things like that, which, and there's also a bunch of stuff that got added after I had played the game, right? Because the game came out in 2017, I played it on PC, and then in 2018 they added a bunch of stuff when it came out on console platforms, so I never really went back to any of that stuff. You know, I tend to be the type of person who doesn't go back to games after I'm done with them. It's a very rare scenario for me to, you know, jump back in when there's an update or there's something new being added or something along those lines, right? So how do we feel about like stuff after credits, like post-game stuff?
Almost, depends, but for me it's like almost even more negative than multiple endings, because it's like, right, I'm done with the game, and oh god, you're actually throwing me stuff now after unless I'm having an absolute ball of a time, I very rarely dip into like post-credit stuff. And I know even earlier in the show we were talking about like roguelikes and how you're very keen on beating them again and again and again. Yeah. And for me with a game like Hades, like, I knew there was something cool you get for 10 defeats, so I wanted to get there, and I really enjoyed my journey to get there. Dead Cells just narratively didn't have the same chops, and I was like, exactly. I don't, there's not much more I want from this game beyond the first credit sequence. So it depends on the game, but generally speaking, once I've seen credits, I'm good.
Totally. I do think that there are rare exceptions for me where I fall in love with a game so deeply that I just don't want to move on from it, you know? Like, Hades and Celeste are two perfect examples of that, where, like, I drilled those to their very core, right? Like, I finished Celeste and I was like, right, time to do all these B-sides.
I owe myself to do those B-sides for sure.
Yeah, totally. That's a good example, I think, of one that you do want to go back to, right? At some point. So, like, I was like, I did all the B-sides. Like, well, what's next? Okay, let's do all these fucking impossible C-sides. Let's do all of that shit. And I did eventually get to a breaking point with Celeste with the Farewell DLC where...
Yeah, they did one more DLC after that.
Yeah, where they started introducing mechanics where I was like, I just don't think I have the dexterity to pull this off. Like, I have played so many hours of Celeste and I think I'm quite good at it, but now we're in speedrunner territory and I'm not sure I can get to the end of this.
I don't think that's ever happened to you with like a 2D platforming game before.
Man, it's fucking hard.
Where you've looked at the challenge and gone, no.
I think I must have spent almost an hour on just the tutorial for how to do this thing, and I couldn't pull it off, of the tutorial of how to do this mechanic. And I was just like, well, if I can't do it in the tutorial, how am I going to get through the rest of this DLC? So the nice thing about Celeste is if I do want to go back to it, I can just turn on assist mode and just kind of go through it and see the story stuff if I really want to. But yeah, maybe I'll go back to that someday. And then Hades is an example of like, yeah, I would say like beating it 10 times actually is similar to Tunic, where like that's kind of the ending you want to go for. But then I went even beyond that and I beat it, I think, 49. This is the thing. I've beaten Hades 49 times. I've completed it 49 times. But also I have done 99 runs. So my next run, if I fuck it up, then I will not have the perfect 50-50 balance of like 50 wins to 100 runs. So I'm very hesitant to go back to Hades now because I have this almost pristine record that I want to keep. So yeah, but I did pretty much exhausted everything in that game. Character dialogue, the system where you give gifts to everybody, I've maxed out pretty much everyone. I think there's maybe one person who I haven't. So yeah, there's still some stuff left to do, but I put almost 100 hours into Hades, and that is a great example of where post-game stuff, as light as it is, as minimal as it is, of just like there's little conversations you can have and just pushing little narrative things forward, there was enough of a hook on the stick and enough of like gameplay enjoyment for me to go there and up all the modifiers and difficulty stuff that I just fell in love with just constantly playing that game over and over. And yeah, it is, at this point it is one of the great games of all time for me. Like it's up there in the pantheon. So games like that where I really get into them, that's when that will happen. And Xenoblade 3 is a great example where like there is really cool like fan servicey story stuff that happens after the credits that like if you're a Xenoblade fan, you just have to do it. Like it's just required reading almost, like the game is not over until you have done those post-game quests. And even now I still have like multiple colonies where I haven't maxed them out and stuff. So I feel the draw every day, Bally, to just instead of playing new games, just to go back and play more Xenoblade. But I kind of just like want to do that, and it's hard sometimes when you're so pulled in by a game that you kind of don't want to play anything else. You almost have that like that post-game hangover, right, where you're just like you've been so enthralled by something, you're just so blown away by it that it's hard to pick up anything new, and that happens very rarely, I think, for me, but when it does, it really hits very, very hard. So yeah.
For me, if I had an awesome time with a game and there's no like post-credit experience, and you're kind of just living in the moment, I just kind of throw myself into like reviews and podcasts and people theorizing about the game and like and maybe I might do that like a year on from the game and just like really enjoy it in that way without actually playing the game sometimes.
It's the second-hand experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like I have watched like probably up to 20 to 30 different people react to certain moments in Xenoblade 3, and I just keep doing it. I just keep going back and I keep listening to the music and all that stuff. Like when a game and or experience like hits with you in that way, I think it's it's really cool. And so endings can be important to that, but oftentimes the games go beyond the ending, and that can be really, really cool. So yeah, I don't know if there are any, as you said, I found it really hard to think of a game where I found it kind of average and then the ending was spectacular, I think it's really rare for that to happen. It probably has happened, but it's hard for me to think of examples where that's the case, where it really just elevates it. And I would say that like Kirby was a great game anyway. It wasn't like the Kirby was bad and it suddenly had a spectacular ending. It was just maybe like getting a little bit long in the tooth and then had a spectacular ending. I think that's probably where a lot of JRPGs sit, where they're really great, but then they kind of go on for a bit too long, and then they have really spectacular endings, you know?
I definitely had a like jaw on the floor moment when I first played like Last of Us Part 1 in 2020. Like I think the second third of that game is very good, but maybe not as impactful as the first. And then I think the ending or like the final quarter is like, damn, okay.
Yeah. You know what? I think Last of Us Part 2 is an example where the ending made the game worse for me, in fact. Like, I think...
And I agree with you in terms of juxtaposed with Part 1, for sure.
Yes, yeah.
I did enjoy Part 2's ending more than you, for sure, but that game is incredibly long.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, endings are interesting. They're cool. But yes, in the words of Brandon Sanderson, journey before destination. That is my...
Here's one
theory.
with a fantastic ending.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the goddamn name. What's the alternate Uncharted we like?
Oh, alternate Uncharted?
Not alternate
Tomb
Uncharted.
Raider?
No, it's an Uncharted game, but it's the short
Lost
one.
Legacy.
Lost Legacy.
Yeah,
I can never remember that name.
Yeah.
I think that game has an unbelievably cool, well done ending.
Yes, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of spectacle to that thing that I think is really, really great. And it almost does a similar thing to a previous Uncharted game, but does it like in a even better way. And I think that's awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of good endings out there. So yeah, video game endings, they're cool. I like them.
Thanks for your email, Mike. That was a really good one. Really appreciate that. But that's what we've got time for emails on this part of the show. As I said at the top of the segment, please email thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. If you would like to write into the show, it would be most appreciated. But we're going to join you in the third segment where we're going to be talking about that Super Mario trailer.
Alright everybody, welcome back to the third and final part of today's episode. It is time to talk about the movies, which we...
Is that your Mario voice?
It's me, it's a Chris Pratt, it's a me and Mario. I'm here in the Mushroom Kingdom, it's a fun time. Yeah, so we finally heard that voice. That was cool. The Super Mario Brothers movie, Bally, has been a thing that has, like a sword of Damocles, hung over all Nintendo fans' heads for years now.
When was it first announced?
I think
feels like ages ago.
Yeah, probably 3 years ago or something along those lines. Which probably...
I think discussions, in Miyamoto referenced this with Chris, I can't remember his name.
Meladandri is the Illumination guy. No, Meladandri.
Meladandri. Since like 7 years ago, I think he said. So.
Is it that long? My God.
Yeah, he said that's when they first talked about a Mario film.
I guess, yeah, them having internal discussions, but
Yes.
when did it become public? I don't know, a few years ago at the very least. Which for me probably sounds like quite a long time for movies. I would say movies generally move, especially animated movies, move at quite a quick pace these days. It's probably to do with the fucking broken state of the VFX industry and how poorly those people are paid and everything. That's a whole nother matter. It's definitely been a long time coming, and I think the biggest moment so far in this campaign was the Nintendo Direct last year, where Miyamoto showed up halfway through and was like, hey, I'm going to tell you about the cast of the Mario movie. And we were all like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this in a Nintendo Direct? And, the reveals of that were just like legendary, like absolutely wild shit.
Yeah.
Everyone lost their minds. It was pretty bizarre. But like when it comes down to it, when you really think about it, like, this is the most typical thing for animated movies. Like, they just get the biggest name stars possible for animated movies these days. It's how you get people into cinemas. I saw a tweet from a booktuber I follow, Daniel Green, who he does like fantasy stuff, and he also does like he does a fancy news show basically, but he kind of brings video game stuff into that sometimes. And he was like raging on Twitter, like, why did they not use the original voice for Mario? Why he's still alive? Why do they not use him for the movie? And I replied to him, and I was like, it's a pretty simple answer. It's marketing. Like,
it's more than one answer though, and I completely agree with Chris Scullion, who said he basically tweeted a video from New Super Mario Bros. U, where there's basically Martinet does a lot of chatting in that game, and I think this was like an edit 10 minutes worth of all the cutscenes in that game.
Okay. And
Chris Scullion was making the point, right, here's 10 minutes of Charles Martinet talking. Are you telling me you can put up with this for a nearly 2-hour film? Yeah. There is just no way that level of energy and hysteria can last for a 2-hour film. And I completely agree, honestly. And it makes me think about the Mario games, and it's like, when you think about it, why does Mario sound so over the top? Why does Luigi sound so over the top? Why does Toad? Why does Peach? They all sound so over the top because they barely speak at all. So when you do hear them...
Right, it's almost injecting that character into the small moments that they have.
Yeah, so when you're injecting character into a small segment of time, you've got to bloody go for it. And that's what Martinet's all about. And it works really well for the games, but... that in a film, I personally wouldn't like.
Yeah, totally.
And I might have said the opposite on a previous podcast, but I've been completely swayed by Scullion's tweet. And I agree with you totally, combined with Chris Pratt and marketing this damn thing. Like, I think it's twofold for sure. I think that...
Yes, I definitely think it is. But, like, let's be honest. At the end of the day, 90% of the reason is because people know who Chris Pratt is. And that's why. And this is... If you're going to sell tickets to a movie into cinemas, that's what gets people in seats. Is people they've heard of. It's big celebrity names. And that's really the very simple answer is he's a famous person.
But you don't agree that Martinet just wouldn't work?
No, I do agree on that. But, like, if you're thinking about from an executive standpoint, I don't think they actually care that much about that. They care more about, let's get Anya Taylor-Joy in this, and let's get, like, all these famous people. That is, honestly, the most important thing. It's marketing. That's all it is. It's very simple. And you know, the reason all these animated movies have big stars in them is so that they can get people into seats. Very, very simple. So yeah, I think it makes sense why they did it. As funny as it was in that Nintendo Direct when we're all reacting, it's like, well, this is just the most Hollywood move ever. Like, of course they're going to do this. Like, there's no kind of like, there's no universe in which they would, it's why Tom Holland plays Nathan Drake in the movie, right? Like, they have the original actor. He has done TV before, Nolan North is very competent and very, very good, and he's the voice of Drake that everyone knows. But Tom Holland is Tom Holland. So, like, what the fuck are you going to do? You're going to get Mark Wahlberg and Tom Holland?
I don't think Tom Holland was huge before he got Spider-Man, though, right? Like, there are still plenty of Hollywood examples where they go for... but I think the big Marvel film or Star Wars film can be the film that makes actors.
Exactly, but the thing there, right, is that the franchise is bigger than the person, and so you create stars from the franchise in the first place, right? Like, they almost... I
think Mario is bigger than most of these people.
No, but I think in this case, right, animated is totally different to real life because it's a character versus an actual on-screen persona. When you're talking about stuff like Marvel or you're talking about Star Wars, the illusion that they want to create is this is the character, you want to associate that person with the character. And so why Tom Holland is so associated with Spider-Man is because people didn't know him before that role, right? He was relatively unknown.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with, John Boyega and Daisy Ridley. They cast unknowns in these big pictures because they want to create that association, and then they go on to be big stars, and then they get cast into things for other things because of that reason. But I think animation is totally different in that way, because it's just like, it's not the actual person. So they need other ways of getting people in, which is, taking people like Chris Pratt. Was he well known? He was on Parks and Rec, but Guardians of the Galaxy made him a name. All these big name actors these days, half of them come from Marvel movies, right? Like, when you look at it, that's what happened. They made their name in those movies because that's what they get associated with, and then they're famous as a result, and as a result, then they get cast in everything else. So I think that's kind of the pipeline we're looking at when it comes to franchise stuff and animation. If it was a real life Mario movie, maybe that would be different, where you would cast an unknown who is Mario, right?
But Chris Pratt's not even an animated unknown. He's the main dude in the Lego Movie, which is that's critically the best animated film in the last decade.
Yeah, totally. But then, that also is a result of him being famous beforehand, right? Like, all famous people get in animated movies because they were famous beforehand, basically.
Oh yeah, I'm not denying that, but like I think that it's important. He's had a huge role in an animated film, and it's not just about Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think a little bit. I don't think they think about it that much, to be honest. Like there are a bunch of people in here who haven't done animated stuff as well, so I think that it's a consideration.
But they're not the leading role.
Yeah, true. That's true. It's very inevitable, I think. But
what do you think of the trailer?
The trailer was fine. I thought it was okay. I didn't have much expectation for it, and it's kind of like it's a Hollywood movie, right? Like they're gonna hit the same beats that every movie that's an animated movie hits, right? It looks very nice. I think it's very pretty, and they've done a very good job making it look nice. But yeah, I think it's totally fine. I don't have very strong opinions. I think for me,
did you think it was going to be an origin story?
I didn't know what it was going to, and I think there's also a lot of lingering questions left here, right? Because Mario just comes out of a pipe and ends up in the Mushroom Kingdom, and he's looking around as if he's never seen this place before, right?
Yeah.
Which to me says, is he a New Yorker who gets sucked into a world, right? Is Mario a real plumber out in New York? Does he look like...
If Mario's home is not the Mushroom Kingdom, where is his home?
Exactly. Where does Mario originate from, right?
New Donk City.
Ooh, spicy. Now, that would be fun. Okay? I'd be down for that.
The start of the film cannot be him arriving in the pipe. It's got to be him in his regular life, right?
Well, here's the thing, right? Are they going to do the thing where it's just like, I'm a real guy in the real world, but I get sucked into the animated one, and now I look like a cartoon character?
Like the Lego movie.
Yeah, is Chris Pratt going to just be like walking around with a moustache on, right, in real life, and then he just gets sucked? He's actually a New York plumber called Mario, right? He's just a regular dude who is a plumber in New York who fixes people's pipes, and one day he goes to someone's pipe.
Yeah, but if Nintendo are already treading a fine line with like heritage and stereotypes, I think actually getting him as a plumber in New York called Mario would be going too far.
I think
not
it might
to
be.
say it's
it
out of
might
the
be.
question.
No, it's not out of the question. But like, hear me out here, right? Because if that happens, then it's very easy for him to just be at someone's house. Some weird stuff, magic stuff's happening. He's looking at a pipe. Oops! All of a sudden, he gets shot into this world, and now he's an animated character, right? Like, it's very feasible that would be the case. Which then explains the accent and explains him being like, Mushroom Kingdom, here we go, like that kind of, it's like got a bit of Brooklyn to it. It's got a bit of like, we're not going down the stereotypical Italian.
It's Chris Pratt's obviously, but it's a light accent.
It is light, yeah.
It's Chris Pratt does New York in the same way that my accent's quite English sounding, but has like a lilt of Scottish. I've not got a very Scottish accent.
Right, exactly.
But it's not Scottish. It's a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a lilt. Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
It's like a New York lilt.
Yeah, I will say that Jack Black as Bowser sounds great. I do enjoy him.
Amazingly good.
Yeah.
I was really impressed.
Almost like they've almost animated him to look like Jack Black as well, like the way his face moves.
The
and
eyebrows
everything.
were like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, totally. It did get a chuckle out of me when the penguins were just throwing, they were like this big setup of like the war, and then they just start throwing, and then it cuts to that shot of Bowser standing there and just being getting hit with snowballs. I thought was very funny. So
I think I was pretty impressed by the trailer. I obviously didn't know what to expect. It does seem like this is Bowser taking over different parts of the Mushroom Kingdom, and this will be quite near the film, the introduction of Bowser. This is him just taking over this ice world that the penguins live in. Yeah,
he's basically just being a colonizer, essentially, is what Bowser's doing.
Who's gonna stop Bowser? He's just being a dickhead, and then Mario comes, we don't know from where, and it's his origin story to become the hero of the Mushroom Kingdom and take down Bowser.
Probably. Have you seen any leaks, by the way? Because there was an image of Princess Peach that has leaked out that seems very legit now.
I've not seen the Peach leak. No, What did you think of the Peach leak?
Looks very good. I think that their version of Peach looks great. I think these characters, the designs are definitely their own style, right? Like when you look at Mario, he is, I wouldn't say he's off, but like he looks very different. They've definitely gone with a distinctive style.
I think you can get used to it. I like it. The same with like the style of the mushrooms and the grass, and it's like it's got a look.
There's something like not organic, but like something just like almost.
Yes, there's an element of it being organic for sure. Yeah. It's not just a cartoon.
There's a texture to those mushrooms that is just like well, this is almost flesh, you know?
Yes,
like,
totally.
there's a weirdness
And like
to
Toad
that.
has teeth and stuff like this.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Honestly, I really like it, like, because it gives the film its own identity.
Right,
like,
exactly.
This is the Mario film. It's not just the film version of the game. I mean, to some degree, I guess it is, but
Yeah.
it's very much like, we'll look back on this in 20 years and be like, yep, that's a shot from the Mario film, because you
Right.
can just tell from that style.
Because there's a distinctive look that each of the characters have. And I think that's... When I was first thinking about this in an animated movie, I was just thinking about, like, you know, your typical 3D renders of what Mario looks like in Nintendo promotional material, and being like, yeah, it'll probably just look like that, right? It'll just be like Mario, what he looks like usually, you know? But I think because they have stylized it in this way, and they are definitely making it its own thing, it stands out as distinct. And I think that makes sense, right? Because they tried to do that with Sonic, and it fucked up, and they were like, well, this version doesn't work, so let's go back to what he kind of looks like in the games. And I'd say Sonic and the Sonic movie looks a lot similar to Sonic and the Sonic games than this Mario does for the equivalent, you know?
Is the reason that it's stylized so that they future-proof themselves if they want to cross over universes with something that might be a little more Zelda or Metroid or maybe not Pokemon. I don't, just does it future-proof them a bit if they want to link it to other worlds, and that it's not a bit like Smash Brothers does. You know, they've all got their unique Smash Brothers style.
That's the thing that everyone wants, like, you know, create the MCU but with Smash Brothers, basically, right? Like, it's basically the video game equivalent of the MCU. And like, if you find some way to get Detective Pikachu and this Mario movie together in some kind of shared universe, but also bring in...
You mean you got New York Chris Pratt talking to New York Pikachu?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I'm here for it. That's an adventure I would love to see. But like, if you're able to somehow do that, and then here's Samus in a Metroid movie, here's Link in a Zelda movie, are you able to like take those together? Are you able to create a... You know, Nintendo have now bought a studio that they have renamed Nintendo Pictures, right? So there is at least a concerted effort here to move a bit more into the movie space. And, you know, we've talked before about Miyamoto. He's now the creative fellow over there. He does theme parks, he does movies. Is this his new project, you know, as his kind of retirement from video games, in a sense of just like doing this stuff instead, and maybe starting to build out what could be a cinematic universe for Nintendo? I don't think that's their style, if I'm brutally honest. Like, it's a nice dream to have. I don't know that Nintendo looks at it that way. I think they look at them as individual separated products that stand on their own, that don't necessarily tie together. But I don't know. I think there's room for it. I think people would like it. I think it would be successful. But I don't think Nintendo generally listens to what people say in terms of what they think would be successful. So, yeah, I think it would be amazing. But I don't know, what would it look like? What would a Metroid movie look like? Because it would have to be much more mature. It would have to be aimed at an older demographic, and not like this Mario movie clearly is aimed at kids, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I think there are definitely hurdles, and I think the number two candidate. Well, they've already. Well, there's rumors that there's going to be like a Donkey Kong film, right?
Yes,
and
yeah.
So and we know that Donkey Kong is in this film.
Yes.
Therefore, are they not already admitting that they are doing? There's always that debate anyway, isn't there? That Donkey Kong part of the Mushroom Kingdom anyway, right? So maybe that's not the best example, but I think you start with Mario movie, you then go to Donkey Kong. You go from there. I think the third one might be, I don't know, Splatoon, Animal Crossing.
Oh man,
Zelda.
Splatoon would be great. Like, there's already weird lore in Splatoon that you could make something really cool out of that. I think that would be pretty amazing.
And then we're gonna have to get over the hump of Inklings speaking English and all this sort of thing.
Yeah,
we'll get there. But I think this trailer was really, really good. I think that it looks unique. I think the voices work, as weird as they might be initially. And I am super intrigued as to where Mario is coming from. That is really intriguing to me. Like, what is going on?
How does he get there in the first place?
How does he get there? And just like, I'm excited to see the nods to the games and nods to other things, and there'll be the post credits trailer, and you know, just I'm excited for all that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it looks gorgeous, you know, from a visual standpoint. It's really impressive. Like, when Bowser just like blasts his fire on that snow fortress, I'm like, Jesus, they spent some money on this thing.
Yeah.
They really, really did. So it's visually really, really impressive. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, it's just going to be, a traditional kids, Illumination animation film. I don't think it's going to really break any boundaries. I don't expect it to. I don't think that's what they're trying to go for. They just want an extension.
Are you talking about critically amongst fans or money-wise?
I think, it's a mod. Just to be brutally honest about it, it's a modern Hollywood animated movie, right? Like it's not going to be anything that's going to win awards, especially for a mainstream audience. There are definitely animated movies out there.
I think you're talking down animated films a bit here.
No.
If you look at last decade, some of the Pixar films that have come out, and the way that those films are able to aim themselves at family audiences, but also adults, but also teenagers and different audiences. I appreciate Illuminations are different to Pixar, but I think there is room where you can do nods that please different audiences within the one film.
I would separate this from Pixar, because Pixar is all original properties. This is a licensed IP, right? Like, it's a licensed IP, which the rules are different. Nintendo are going to have some kind of weird control over it. They don't want Mario doing certain things. They don't want characters represented in certain ways, and that generally takes away from the artistry of it. It means you're less free creatively to do interesting stuff. So fundamentally, I think just because of the limitations and the boundaries placed by a stakeholder like Nintendo on something like this, you're ultimately going to get something that is fun, fine, inoffensive, probably a little forgettable, just like Detective Pikachu was. Like, Detective Pikachu's a fun film. It's not doing anything revolutionary. It's a fun, kind of romp. It's enjoyable. It's not going to win awards, right? And that is exactly how I feel the Mario movie is going to be. It's a licensed IP. There's only so much you can do with it when there's this many kind of fingers in the pie. And Pixar for me is a totally different thing, because that's totally original creative vision coming from original ideas made by a company that is kind of built on the back of that. So I don't think it's a good comparison, if I'm honest. Those are the types of animated movies that do win awards. These are the ones that don't. It's a licensed movie. You're only going to go so far.
Do you think there's going to be any plot twist?
Probably. There'll probably be some weird thing that goes on. But again, it's not going to be something that, breaks the internet. It might do. I don't know. People seem to like that Sonic movie a lot. But again, is that Sonic movie winning any awards?
So you predict critically it's average, sales-wise?
It does I think it does really well, probably. I think it's Mario is a well-known brand. He's an IP, just like Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it's going to sell a lot of movie tickets. A lot of people are going to go and see it. A lot of kids are going to go and see it. A lot of parents are going to take their kids to go see it, right? Because it is now a brand that has lived for 40 years. 40 years, Mario, at this point, when you think about it. It's like, Jesus Christ, people are old now who grew up with Mario. So there are families who will go there with the adults and the kids. And I'm sure they're building it in that way, like you said, like Pixar movies do, to have jokes.
Yeah, that's what I mean, is how... Look how referential a game like Mario Odyssey is, and the way it's able to appeal to a brand new Mario audience, as well as people who have been there from day one. Like, how much do they lean on that stuff for the film?
Yeah, I think there's definitely lots of references.
Doesn't necessarily just have to be the smart-ass jokes that Pixar films have. I didn't mean just that, but
Yeah, totally. I think it will have that, sure, but I think it will also have the references and because the Sonic movie has a bunch of that stuff as well, right? And I think it makes sense for them to lean into it, because you then get a lot more internet stuff going on where YouTube videos are breaking down here all the Easter eggs and stuff like that. It's just, there's a kind of perpetual cycle. It's almost built in that way. So I think it'll be totally cool. I'll go watch it once and I'll be like, that was fun, and then I'll probably forget it ever existed. I think from Nintendo's standpoint, and I think we have an email on this, so maybe we jump into that about is there gonna be any kind of tie-in from Nintendo when it comes to the movie from a game perspective? So Bally, do you want to read the message from Hawks Bill, who posted this in Discord?
Hawksbill says, hello, on the back of the Super Mario Brothers movie trailer, what do we think the odds are of a brand new spanking new 2D Mario game to be released around the same time, or maybe just after E3? Based on the trailer, maybe a 2D Mario Galaxy. Alternatively, think it's set up for a new 3D game with a more vast, open-ish world. Cheers.
So I think this is a nice idea. I also don't think that this is how game development works. If they're making a game, they are making it from the perspective of how Nintendo make games, which is Splatoon was originally a bunch of tofu blocks, right? They are gameplay first, and they are whatever the hell else second. So if they are going to do something that ties in with the movie, I think it would have to be much smaller scale and something that could be made on a tighter time frame, on a smaller budget that somehow is able to make it work with the timing. And Nintendo only puts out games when they think they're ready. I mean, they sit on games, for God's sake. They sit on games for years and years that are already done. And I feel like this is a nice pipe dream, but I don't think it's the way functionally the company will work. And I think that they see stuff like their mobile business, like their theme park stuff, as separate but kind of integrated in the way that like they exist to bring in new fans and kind of help bridge that gap, but also like please existing fans. But it's going to be quite separated, right? I don't think that they're going to have a new Mario game that looks like the art style of the new Mario movie. To me, that's the kind of thing Sega would do with a Sonic movie, right? Like, it's not the kind of thing Nintendo would do as a company. I just feel like they are against that idea. Now, I could be proved wrong, in which case, like, whatever. Nintendo are also unpredictable, so who the hell knows? But I don't think it's likely that that's the case. What do you think?
I think there's a decent chance of a Mario game coming out next year. I think the chances of it have ever been planned to tie in with the film at all are little to none, basically. Like, I think that it's very different compared to, say, Sony getting out that... They got out The Last of Us 1 remake for PS5 in time for the HBO show. I think when you already have a console that's got at least 15 games with the name Mario in them on the Switch as it stands, I don't think there's not a ton of incentive for Nintendo to have a brand new Mario game out, ready for next year. They might re-promote something like Mario Odyssey or do a brand new Switch bundle, who knows? But like it's just they operate in a very different way. Not to mention that, as you said, like this film has been supposedly delayed a bit. Like, it was kind of meant to be this year, and yes, Nintendo sit on games, but I'd be shocked if Nintendo would ever sit on something as big as Mario or Zelda. Like, I feel like those are two franchises where when those games are ready, they want them out and making some money. So I don't know. I think it's a big no from me. Yeah,
I think the closest they would get is like tie-in promotions with other games, right? Like, look at what Splatoon is doing with their next Splatfest. They're tying it into Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out, and they're having something associated with that. And Splatoon is no stranger to brand integration because it's done it a bunch in the past in terms of Splatfest stuff. So, if Nintendo are going to do Mario versus Peach versus Luigi for a Splatfest, that will definitely happen, right, as part of Splatoon. Or, in some other game where they're building in some kind of DLC, like, they've done a Mercedes DLC in Mario Kart, for God's sake. I don't think they're above doing some kind of tie-in where and when it makes sense. Is this the moment that Mario comes to Fortnite? Is this the big enough event where that is the kind of coordinated marketing effort that Nintendo actually wants to have stuff go on with Epic? Like, I don't know, maybe that could certainly be something that happens. I could see it being a possibility. But when it comes for a ground up game made that is based on a movie, I think we're just beyond that era when it comes to licensed tie-in games, and especially for a company like Nintendo, they're not going to kind of lower themselves to do that just to get a quick cash grab. They are going to be, they 100%, as you said, they're very likely working on a sequel to Mario Odyssey and have been for many years, and that would have been in planning stages long before, or it's totally separate to the whole idea of a Mario movie coming out. So if we are in a situation where it comes out in the same year or the same time frame as a Mario movie, it's coincidence, right? It's not going to tie in.
I mean, I think you got a point. Like, the development of both the film and that game might have started at very similar times.
Probably, yeah.
And they might even come out within months of each other. But I think that would definitely be accidental more so than anything else.
And not purely accidental, because I'm sure it benefits Nintendo to have marketing surrounding a game while there's hype around a movie, right? Like, there's some coordination to it, but from a creative perspective, there's certainly no coordination that I expect on that front. That doesn't make sense to me.
And like, I know Mario is probably due, like, especially in the 2D space, is definitely due like a new look rather than just that new style. God, I hate the name new. How do you new style? He's a new look. He's already had a new look. I mean, a new look,
Nintendo ruined the word new. They just killed it.
I hate it. But will they mimic anything from the film? I don't think so. I think they that development team will want something very unique and what works for the game.
Exactly. And Nintendo are best when you give their creatives vision or freedom to run in whatever direction they want to, right?
Yeah. I mean, for all we know, Nintendo wanted this film to look a hell of a lot more like the games, and then Illumination said, no, we want to put our stamp on it, thanks very much. We're going to make it look a lot more lifelike, and we're going to get rid of Mario's ass. You know,
that has been a big conversation.
They want their stamp on this film as much as Nintendo do. So,
and their stamp is asses are not good for the Mushroom Kingdom.
We're going to go for a tall, lean, mean Mario.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I liked Keegan-Michael Toad as Michael Keane. I already fucking blended his name.
Keegan-Michael Toad.
He is. Yeah, I think that was a good Toad. I like the Toad.
That was good. Little snippet of Luigi looked fun.
Yes, almost Luigi's Mansion-esque in a dark kind of area.
Again, like away. I think those are the two go-tos for like spin-off films. Would be maybe like Luigi's Mansion and likewise Donkey Kong. You know, like
definitely
stick to the Mushroom Kingdom first. If all of those work well, then you can go to the other ones perhaps.
I think for me personally, when it gets to Mario talking is fine because he does kind of chirp and chip in games, so there's almost a little bit of like, we know that Mario can talk. Link doesn't fucking talk. Samus says one line in Metroid Dread. It might be the coolest fucking line in the whole game, and she says it in another language, and it's fucking amazing. But like, she has that mystique about her and that kind of like
apart from Mother M, she does a lot of talking, right?
That's true. Which wasn't great. We don't talk about that. But I do think that like there's almost does it ruin the illusion to have a movie where Samus is talking and Link is talking, as a lot, as a main character? I don't know. I think they'll have to figure that out when and if they cross that bridge, but we'll have to see how this does first, right? We'll see
it is interesting when Mario is and forever will be first and foremost a video game character.
Yeah.
And that spell is breaking next year. And like that's a big deal. Like, because that defines that is the biggest definition of like his voice. And the same with like Link. If Link suddenly became in a film, like Link is no longer just a video game character. He's now also a film character.
A multimedia property.
Multimedia property. And multimedia properties generally talk. Unless you're like a minion.
Yeah, in which case you can get away with a whole movie where they just like, I don't know, say banana.
Are the penguins going to be the minions, or the toads going to be the minions, or are they even going to have anything that's like a minion?
Are they going to have an equivalent? Yeah. What if the rabbids show up? That's the thing, right? Did Ubisoft get in here? I do feel like a Mario plus Rabbids movie would be quite good, given the cutscenes in that game and like the way that the new game is shaping up. You could have a pretty funny comedy movie with the rabbids, I think.
I want to know what other kingdoms Bowser's going to stomp on.
Yeah,
like, we've got the icy penguin one, like,
because I think we've seen those kind of penguin characters in Mario games before, like in Ice Worlds, they're like lying on their
they're like, it's the Mario 64 penguins.
It is,
they've reappeared a few times.
Yeah, totally. So like, what other, we see a bunch of Koopas and stuff hanging out, waiting. It is a Darth Vader moment, isn't it, as he kind of walks through the ranks, there's a bit of Star Wars in there, which is fun.
The second that Magic Koopa's like speaking, were you just like, this is weird?
No, that was the first. I do appreciate that they didn't have a main character talk first. It kind of like almost kind of like gets you into it.
It's a nice warm up to Bowser. Bowser was very good.
Yeah.
And then Mario gets spit out the pipe, and you're like,
lands on a very fleshy mushroom, and then
very fleshy mushroom.
and then follows Toad off to the Mushroom Kingdom. So I mean, I'm sure we'll see more trailers, and there'll be a big hype marketing cycle behind this whole thing. I probably should watch those Sonic movies, if I'm honest. We probably should do that.
Yeah. Are they on Netflix now, I want to say, in the UK?
I don't know. They're probably somewhere. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that and maybe talk about it on a show at some point. Sure. But, I don't know. This
might be Bally Jr.'s first film.
Yeah. Oh, please.
Me and Caroline, we could try and find like a bit. They do like baby showings.
Yeah.
Where everyone, it must just be a racket. It's just
they must have to have subtitles on the screen or something, right? Like that's probably what they have to do.
But like, I would happily go to a baby showing with him.
Yeah,
either that or I ask Caroline very nicely to look after him for a couple hours. I'm just going to go by myself.
Yeah, as you, this grown adult, go watch this animated Mario movie. Yeah,
I will 100% do that.
Yeah, totally.
Unless Bally Jr. wants to come.
Yeah, no, you should make that his first movie. That'll good indoctrination, I think. Very good.
He's probably going to be way too young. Okay, we should also say, I believe the American trailer had like, it was coming out in April, and then the UK had like no mention whatsoever. So as things stand, I think films normally come out 2-3 weeks after in the UK.
Sometimes they come out earlier. It's just a weird thing. I'm not sure how it works. Yeah.
So April 2023, I think Bally Jr. will be like 11 months old. So maybe
it's also way sooner than I thought. I thought it was going to be end of next year. So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of come around quickly without me.
We're going to get April's the Mario movie, and May is Breath of the Wild 2.
Oh shit!
Or Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom. Looking forward to that. Great.
Not Kingdom of Tears.
No, not as you said many times.
I said it about 5 times. I'd written it down as Kingdom of Tears. That's why I kept saying the same wrong thing. But yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that's going to do us. That's going to wrap us up for the show. Thanks everybody for listening and sticking with us. We have some things to plug and talk about before we get out of here. So let's chat about patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can go and support us if you so wish to do so. And you can get some bonus episodes and fun stuff. Bally, who are we going to thank for our Patreon today?
I'd like to give a shout out to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, and Wicked Gamer UK Alan. Thank you all for your $10 tier support, but thank you to all of our patrons. It's hugely appreciated, the support you give the show.
Absolutely. Head on to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife and you can support us if you want to, if you have the means to. We'll really appreciate that stuff. You can go ahead and get bonus shows and other things. You can also follow us on social media. Twitter.com is a website that we continue to use. And it has things like me on there at LordNBZ. You can follow and I will tweet, and that is the thing. Bally, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. I tweeted a video of me absolutely shredding the Dead Cells final boss. It was very satisfying.
Yeah, if you want to see Bally's successful run of doing that, it was quite satisfying to watch that for sure. You can also find the podcast on Twitter at TNL Podcast, which has links to our YouTube channel, our Discord, as well as updates on the show and what's happening and what's going on. So follow that if you want to know everything in the TNL universe. You can also obviously find us in various places. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher. You can find us on any podcasting app. If you just search for This Nintendo Life, you can subscribe to us, and that means that the show comes into your feed every couple of weeks and you don't have to worry about going to find it. It's just very nice and convenient. As I said, we have a Discord, a community where people are chatting. You can go there. You can also head over to our YouTube channel if you prefer to have stuff on in a tab in the background, like I often do when I'm playing Overwatch. I have like a podcast tabbed out in my other browser on my second monitor. If that's your preferred method, then you feel free to go there and listen to your convenience. You can also review us. If you go over to Spotify, you can give us a rating, a star rating there. So it'd be highly appreciated if you use that. Even if you don't, head on over, listen to a couple of minutes, and then it will allow you to give a rating to the show, which helps more people find it and kind of grows our listener base, which is really nice. And that would be very, very cool if you're able to do that. I think that is pretty much it. I'm in a holding pattern here, Bally, as waiting for the video games I'm working on to come out, but also October's a busy month for Nintendo. We've got Mario plus Rabbids and Bayonetta 3 coming at the end, so looking forward to those. I don't think they'll be out by the time we have next episode. It might be just on the edge, but
I think Rabbids is the 20th.
Yeah, actually, Rabbids I'll probably have got a good weekend in with Rabbids.
We'll be
next
into
time.
Rabbids, and then Bayonetta 3. I think it's 28th, 29th.
Yes, so we can.
I'll see how much I enjoy Bayonetta 2. Don't want to, even if I have a decent time with it, I maybe won't want to jump straight into 3. But if I love it, might have to do so. Yeah,
I will definitely be talking about 3, so looking forward to that. Hopefully that game is as good as it's looking.
What's Nintendo's big November game?
It's Pokemon. Pokemon's the thing. So we're looking
December.
I don't think they have anything in December. Which, unless they just suddenly drop that Metroid Prime remake that everyone seems to think is still happening this year. Advance Wars, who the fuck knows? Yeah, still kind of hovering in limbo. But still lots to look forward to for the rest of the year. And getting into almost Game of the Year season now. So I want to kind of mop up some stuff that I've missed, stuff like Neon White and some other games that are kind of floating around the ether that a lot of people have been hot on that I would love to check out before end of the year, but we'll see if time permits, if that is possible. I think that is going to do us. Thanks everybody so much for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another podcast episode to talk about more Nintendo video game things. Until then, thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye. The musical interludes used on today's show were Clock Tower from Dead Cells, copyright Motion Twin 2018, and Escape Academy from Escape Academy, copyright Coin Crew Games 2022.